Good morning, SMITE fans, and welcome back to the SMITE Pro League. The SWC group stages all weekend long. Not only this event, but our entirety of Season 9, powered by our good friends over at Prime Gaming. Make sure that you make the most of your Prime Gaming, because we've got a very special offer right now. If you are a Primer, we have our SWC, or I should just say our Season 9 team skins available through Prime Gaming. So make sure that you get an Amazon Prime account, then link that over to your Twitch, and you can pick up all 8 of your SPL team skins, one for each of our teams out there. So make sure that you get it now. If you've got a QR code scanner, you can go ahead and just scan the little thing right there in the corner and claim that over with your Prime Gaming account. Thank you so much to Prime Gaming for being the title sponsor of Season 9 of the SMITE Pro League and powering us through here in the SWC group stage. What an amazing event that we have this week. We are 1 week away from the World Championships, and we got 4 teams still to qualify. To help me get through this first desk segment at least and get through the early portion of the day, I've got Charlie Relly joining me on the desk as we jump into day 1 of this amazing event.
You're telling me Worlds is next week?
I'm telling you, Worlds is a week away, technically from tomorrow, but we are right there, Charlie.
I need to get packed up then. That sounds like it's going to be a good time.
Don't remind me. I've got to pack up my suitcase as well. We got to make sure everything goes through, and all these teams have been battling through our road to Worlds. We are now on part 4 of this event. We had our Phase 3 playoffs earlier on in November. My goodness, that was feels like that was so long away, where we qualified our first 4 SPL teams to Worlds. Then we had our road to Worlds for both the European and North American SCC to get 4 of those teams for this event that's taking place today and the remainder of the weekend, where we are qualifying our last 4 teams to the SWC. We've got our 4 SPL teams that didn't make it and our top 4 SCC teams. And of those 8, only 4 will move on to join in the SMITE World Championship taking place next week. I have to keep iterating because we are so close to the SMITE World Championship. But let's take a look at the brackets, because we're doing a group stage setup for both these squads. So 4 teams per group. In Group A, in our first match of the day, will be the Tartarus Titans and the Highland Ravens. And then our second of those groups will be our match 3 for the day, with the Valhalla Valkyries and the Eldritch Hounds. That'll round out Group A. We'll qualify 2 teams from here to the SWC. But we've also got Group B with 4 teams, and 2 of those to qualify to SWC. Oni Warriors and Shabalba Storm will be match 2 of today. And then to start things out tomorrow, maybe one of the more anticipated matchups of at least this group and maybe of this entire event, Solar Scarabs and Hex Mambo for match 4 of that. Remember, only 2 of the teams from this group will qualify to the SWC. And then after all 4 of these teams have qualified through, the teams that already made it from Phase 3, based on their seeding, will get to pick who their opponent is in those quarterfinal matchups. But Charlie, moving into our first matchup of today, as I mentioned, Tartarus Titans and Highland Ravens. Highland Ravens were the number 2 EU seed coming from their qualifier matchup. Are playing with a sub today. They do have Cozyx standing in for the support role instead of iSilence. Then Angry will be playing from home over at this event out there. But Highland Ravens, definitely a very strong team from the EU region.
Yeah, no doubt. And I think one thing to consider here is the fact that the Tartarus Titans probably did not expect for themselves to be here, right? They wanted to qualify top 4. They didn't want to drop down into the group stages. Maybe some shaky confidence here for the Tartarus Titans. So the fact that the Ravens made it here and were so confident doing it could prove a little bad here for the Tartarus Titans, especially if they come out swinging.
Yeah, and as mentioned, again, iSilence not going to be playing with the roster this time around. Instead, it's going to be Cozyx over in the support role to kind of help this team out more than anything else. And then adapting over into the jungle, you know, this Highland Ravens team was a little sketchy kind of at the beginning of the phase. Once Adapting came through here, gave him some of that veteran leadership, this team has really been able to turn around. And we've actually got Adapting standing by for our pregame interview.
That's right. Adapting with me here for the pregame interview, and Adapting, we just talked about it. You played here in studio earlier on, just a few months ago, but really now, the highest impact SMITE you've played here in studio in probably a couple years now. Overall mood, mentality, a shot at Worlds. You and the team feeling ready to go?
Yeah, super excited. I think it's really fun to be back in the studio, and to play against these SPL teams. They're meant to beat us, so we don't really have any expectations, but I think we're gonna come out swinging.
And the desk talked about it a little bit, playing with Cozyx this weekend instead of Silence at support. How's the team adapted to that change? Do you feel like you guys have been able to sort of pick things up and build up that chemistry effectively?
Yeah, honestly, I think it's been like super smooth transition. I thought like we would struggle a little bit, but maybe it's just honeymoon phase, and maybe that's the right time to have it, right?
That's right. Honeymoon phase for sure this week, sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, and no, he's been playing great, and I feel like we play really well together. So I'm super excited to play.
Now you got to look at your opponents, Tartarus Titans. They're a team in the SPL that they've made some roster swaps, struggled a bit during the Phase 3 playoffs. You know, you mentioned expected to beat you guys maybe, but do you think you've got a fighter's chance? Do you think you guys have a good swing for the Titans here, and maybe what are some matchups individually that you're looking forward to?
Honestly, I think we can beat them. I do. Obviously, like we're the underdogs, but you know, I think we're gonna put on a show today, and it's just gonna be fun. And you know, obviously, I'm excited to play against some SPL junglers again. See, you know, what they have.
That's right, and the SPL jungler you're playing up against was Cyno, who wasn't on the SPL for a lot of the year, has joined this team, has meshed in somewhat effectively. Talk to me a bit about playing Cyno. What do you expect his play style to look like for the Titans?
He plays like super aggressive, and he's kind of like a, how do I say this? Very North American playstyle. He will just go in and like he doesn't care if he lives or not. So expecting him to try and like play some early aggression, and hopefully we can play around that.
Excited to see this one. Thanks for your time adapting. Best of luck. We'll go back to the desk to start this one off.
Some confidence from adapting from the Highland Ravens, and kind of mentioned there, this is a team that might not really have any expectations to win up against the Tartarus Titans. It is an SCC team, so a lot of times people might just kind of write off this team, but I mean, we've been seeing a pretty strong rise of the Highland Ravens. So far, the only team that's been able to really stop them have been Hex Mambo, you know, their EU counterparts over there, but I think the biggest thing that I took from that was the fact that Cozyx has slotted in so well to this team. We saw it with Hex Mambo during at least their Masters 2 over in the Summer Masters, where they had to bring in a sub support, and it worked out really well for them. So hearing that Cozyx is working out so well for this team has got to be a high note for the squad.
Yeah, for sure. And I think adapting very, very honest there, saying like he didn't expect Cozyx to slot in so well, but now that he has, feeling pretty good. And I got to echo what the interview said as well. If you're going to have a honeymoon stage with a new team, if you're going to be looking real clean, this would definitely be the time to do it. Because, I mean, if not, when are you going to get another chance, right? This is the end of the line. So love to see the confidence coming from adapting. And I also like the NA play style there for Cyno. I like the shot as well. I think the EU team plays a little bit more reserved, plays a little bit safer, whereas sometimes, you know, Cyno just wants to go in.
And sometimes it's not only just Cyno going in. A lot of this Tartarus Titans team is one that can play aggressive, given the opportunity, especially with players like SOT over into the Soul lane. He slotted really well for this Titans team over the course of the year, and kind of depending on where the meta goes, kind of depends on what his stuff is. But the newest member of this team, which is so weird to say because there's been so many new players coming over to this Tartarus Titans team over the course of their time, has been Cyno in the jungle, a very, as adapting said, and as we kind of echoed, a North American aggressive playstyle in the jungle. The Naja immediately comes to mind as one of those top picks for a player like this. But Cyno's no stranger to also playing some weird stuff. We didn't really get to see any of the strange picks come out of him during the time in the Phase 3 playoffs. We didn't see the things like the ESET jungle, like the Sky jungle. We saw a lot of the Chalk. We saw a lot of Nemesis when it came through, which Chalk is still a bit of a weird one, but it's one that didn't work out as well. So I got to imagine early pick priority probably on the mind for this team.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, that's been the mindset. We got to talk to Aror in an interview about Cyno joining the roster, and Aror told him play whatever makes you comfortable, but it seems like Cyno was just playing to facilitate, right? If he got Naja, team looked unbeatable. If he got anything else, it was looking a little washy. So that's kind of the play style that I'm imagining here. You got to imagine the Highland Ravens did their homework. If they can shut down that jungle presence, they'll be looking a lot cleaner. So Naja got to be on that ban column. And if so, what has Cyno brought to the table? You talked about those stranger style of picks he used to play. It's not a stretch to say, hey, maybe the ESET jungle or the Scotty jungle could have come out if the Titans are looking for something crazy. However, it's probably just going to be that clean initiation style play, try and let Paul get ahead, let him get some extra farm, that sort of thing. That's usually how Cyno likes to do this.
Yeah, and this is a team that, you know, for a little while for the Tartarus Titans, obviously they weren't playing very much through their jungler when Layers was over there. Cyno joins in, feels like we get a little bit more life back into the jungle. But when this team was succeeding is when they were really facilitating Paul to get ahead in that mid lane. The set looked nigh unbeatable so often that teams were having to ban that one away time and time again. And then finally there seemed to have been an answer for the set once they'd gone through. So I'm curious as to what this Titans team is going to bring out to try and elevate themselves back in. Because I think the point that's going to be hit so many times this weekend, Charlie, is this is it. If you don't make it at this point, you're out for the remainder of the year. You got to pull out all the stops to make it to the SWC at this point. So I'm curious what these teams are going to pull out of their bag of tricks to try and find a win out here. Are we going to see maybe a new kind of emergent meta that pops in through these group stages out here? Are we going to see some new stuff? And is this going to kind of be maybe at least a preview of what we'll see at the SWC?
Yeah, I imagine because it's been a bit since we've seen some competitive Smite. There was a bit of a break over the Christmas time. I'm imagining a bit of a new meta to come through. I think Ao Kuang is a pick that has been sneaking its way up, especially in the ranked scene. We saw some of the EU junglers playing it even before this tournament, but I think that might be something that these teams are looking to try and prioritize, as well as just some great ADC presence. Those are things, the Ishtar, for example, that has already been incredibly high priority. That's nothing new, but those are the things that I'm expecting to come in and maybe shake up a bit of the play styles that have been happening here, because there's no way that we've been gone for 2 weeks or so, and there's going to be nothing new that teams have been cooking up.
And maybe another thing to kind of look at is this mid lane matchup between Angry especially. Angry going to be playing from home this time, not available to come here towards the studio. And the last time that we saw, this kind of situation for Angry had to play from home, we were wondering, okay, what kind of picks do you do in the mid lane when you're playing a little bit higher ping? You do things with big circles, big rectangles, and whatnot. He was still throwing out the Tiamat time and time again. It was working really well for him. Merlin has kind of been rising up into the meta. So I'm curious as to where Angry's God pool will go during this tournament. Whereas we look at the opposite way for Paul. Set has been kind of a huge thing for him. We've seen Hell pop up occasionally through the meta. I think this mid lane matchup could be an interesting one to see develop throughout this matchup, and I think even for both these teams throughout the entirety of this group stage.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I think the set certainly something that Paul still would go to, but for the life of me, I don't see the early game value for that Hell pick. Last time I saw Paul play it, it got absolutely rolled until about 30 minutes, and then they just won off it. So I don't think they want to bank on, hey, if we make it to late game, then we'll just win, especially when adapting's on the map, right? You give him that early presence, you give him that much safety where he can just farm effectively and say, oh, I don't have to worry about Paul for the first 25 minutes. I'm going to get as much action as I can. In this case, I think Paul wants to stick to those early pressure gods. Maybe even, things like the E set. That was a pick that he used to really love, has fallen off the meta a bit, but still does have that incredible amount of early clear, objective lockdown, the best on the map, and just some great self-peel as well. So that could be something that Paul looks to, and I think you're also right about Angry. You're probably looking for easier to hit, easier to execute on mages, but Angry's been used to playing on ping a little bit, so I don't think it's going to affect his playstyle too much.
Yeah, I mean, other things that might even come up for Paul, the Chronos looked really well whenever he was playing up against the Bolts during the Phase 3 playoff matchup there, so could be something at least in his wheelhouse. That's something we've also been seeing, at least for the EU scene as well. We'll see what those do end up going through, but we do need to take it to a quick break. When we come back, we get you guys set up for the picks and bans for game number 1. Everybody, and welcome back. Sorry for the little hiccup there, but we should be getting into game number 1 of our first match of the SWC qualifiers, the SWC group stage here in just a moment. Tartarus Titans and the Highland Ravens, your EU SCC team represented with the Ravens. We'll see if they can make some waves for game number 1 as we get ready to jump into the picks and bans to see what ends up popping up for some of these teams. A reminder for those who are just now tuning in, Cozyx going to be filling in for the support role on this team for the Highland Ravens. Silence out. Angry going to be playing from home as well. And immediately we were, kind of talking about in the waiting room, Trelly, maybe trying to focus out Cyno a little bit in his god pool. The Naja immediately taken out the gate by the Ravens.
Yeah, and the counter back, taking away the King's Thor. Always going to be a good, smart call there from the Tartarus Titans. And actually, Paul's Hell takes a shot as well. So it looks like the Ravens were worried about a little bit of that healing as well as that extra CC immunity that cleanse can bring. They don't want to deal with that. And actually the Vulcans, Paul taking 2 bans there. And it seems like the Titans are going to stick with the jungle and the Ishtar. So nothing too crazy. This is sort of what we expected for these bans. But what are the Ravens going to prioritize? Looks like the Cernunnos. They're trying to get that ADC online, so nothing new.
Yeah, it really feels like the Cernunnos, the Ishtar were kind of the definitive top 2 amongst the SCC squads through their qualifiers. So seeing the Cernunnos as that top pick there. Set on the opposite side for the Titans. No surprise, it's something we've been talking to death about for Paul. That's been a big carry factor for this team. We'll see if the Ravens have some answers to it. And then this Atlas, we didn't see a whole lot of Atlas kind of during the qualifier stage for the SCC teams in general. We didn't really see as much Atlas in the SPL. It was a lot of Maui
Athena
that was popping in. How do you kind of feel about Atlas right now?
I'm a big fan of the Atlas. I think it gets you a ton of pressure over in the duo lane if that's where you decide to play it. Notably, Sot has played it in the solo lane a fair bit, but For my money, Aror probably taking it over to that support role just to try and get some extra potential for beads burn, right? If you can pick someone up, you can pick up a support, in this case possibly, you know, the Athena, and just try and pull them under tower, or just pull a relic, really does start to work out, especially with the Hades, and that does lock in for me that Aror is going to be taking that Atlas, which means a lot of beads burn as well as just good damage for the Tartarus Titans there with the Set and the Hades.
So Set, Atlas, Hades rounds out the top 3 of the Titans. For the Ravens, Cernunnos, Athena for a dual lane, and then Agni gonna round out for the mid lane selections. Agni has also had to rise up with some of the buffs to the mage items, especially I think notably Soul Gem, and then also some direct buffs to Agni. Seems to have made him a priority pick really for some of these mid laners, both in EU and NA. So we'll see how this one works out for the Ravens. Now, Tartarus Titans, their first ban, going to the second wave of those, will be Tier. Opposite side, Pele taken out, as there still hasn't been a pickup for Cyno yet, so it still seems to be a lot of focus towards these jungle bans, Trelly.
Yeah, this is what I imagined. A lot of bans and also not a lot of prioritization towards the jungle. It seems like the Ravens and the Titans are trying to save either the counter pick option, or both of these junglers are just saying, hey, you guys got it. We'll just last pick, right? Like that's kind of the play style that I expected. Unless, of course, something egregious got through, like the Naja or the Thor, for example. I think adapting in this position has been going to the Ratatoskr more often than not. He really does enjoy that pick, so would not be surprised if we saw that rat in the bottom 2. As far as the Titans go, it's been a lot of warrior jungles for Cyno. The Nikes, the Chalks as well, have not been played to much success. So you gotta think Cyno's looking for something else. The Nemesis also comes to mind. That could be something that works out quite well here. The shield is always gonna get you good value. Looks like we're gonna have to wait a little bit longer as Stuart gonna pick up that Rama.
Yeah, I'm about to say, it's been a month since we've seen the Tartarus Titans play. It was all the way back in early December was the last time that we got to see this team face off, and then it was Ishtar, Cernunnos, and Cupid were kind of the top 3 hunters, but it seems that Rama has made his way up into the forefront of that conversation now, as it does get locked in for Stu. Susano picked up for the Highland Ravens, so not going towards the semi-global Ratatoskr to kind of match alongside this Athena, instead going for some big CC and a lot of burst damage late game, and then an Amaterasu to round out for the solo lane, and then Nemesis, probably the expected pick there for Cynos. That seems to have kind of been maybe the default alongside the Chalk that he was really running quite a bit.
Yeah, that's what we expected. Just a little bit of extra prot tread there for the Set, making sure they can target out one single opponent on the side of the Ravens and just delete them, right? That seems to be the call here. Try and use as much of that prot tread that this whole team is going to have. The Atlas also going to help out with that Gamma Ray Burst. Those tanks start looking a lot less tanky when you're able to really solidify your damage. But the Ravens, they've got this global presence with the Athena. They're going to have that easy setup with the taunt and a lot of beads burn as well with that Athena. You got the dazzling offensive, and of course those Agni bombs can really start to add up as well. So I like what the Ravens have done with their team fight, but their early pressure not really there. You're not going to find too much unless it's adapting, going for these ganks in the side lanes, you know, maybe warding up could be the call here, trying to get the Susano online early so that late game Coast and Angry can just do their jobs, right? Hard carry the game away. It's going to be difficult, but it seems like that's the play style they're going for.
So the Ravens maybe looking to kind of play it a little bit more passively to start this game out, wait till that mid, maybe late game kind of a stride out there. So then on the opposite side for the Tartarus Titans, to me, Charlie, this does feel like a team that wants to try and, you know, hit the ground running, couple, level 2, level 3, maybe try and get in there. You think that's the momentum and the pacing that the Tartarus Titans are trying to set?
Yeah, especially with double assassin in that mid 2v2, right? You've got Nemesis and Set. You're probably saying, hey, Agni, if you dash, or even if you don't dash, if you don't even hit level 2, we're going to try and find a kill. Plenty of poke there. You know, the way that Paul likes to play Set is he steps up to the lane. He's going to clear, but also he's going to hit you with Skewer as well. You're going to be consistently getting poked out, and I think if Angry stays in mid lane a little bit too long, there's always going to be that dive potential. So I think you're right. Come out the gate swinging, and the Tartarus Titans, they're not looking to wait too long. I imagine they want to get active probably level 5.
Yeah, I think this mid 3v3 is going to be the most interesting dynamic of this matchup here. Again, you have a sub playing in for the Highland Ravens in that support role. Going to be Cozyx stepping into this spot. You got Angry, who's going to be playing on a little bit of ping, and then adapting, jumping himself onto the Susano. So I'm going to be keeping a lot of my eyes and attention at least towards this 3v3 fight up in the mid lane throughout at least a lot of this early and mid-style stage of the game. Tartarus Titans on the opposite end. You mentioned the double assassin goes through the Atlas for some nice easy CC. And a lot of prot shred more than anything else. I mean, between the Atlas ult, the Nemesis out there, just feels like objectives could go really quickly as well to some of these teams.
Yeah, that certainly could be the call. I think they've got some decent bursts with the Hades as well, assuming that Sod rotates in. So I just think as long as they're looking toward these objectives, get that ward vision up, they should be just fine.
Our first best of 3 of the SWC group stage between the Highland Ravens and the Tartarus Titans. For game number 1, we'll throw it over to Dulcin and Mifflin.
Let's start it off with some high-octane matchups here, and it's the Highland Ravens and the Tartarus Titans going toe-to-toe. And we talked about it on the SPL waiting room. You favor the Titans in this matchup, but adapting in the pregame interview talked a lot about how the Titans are expected to win. They're the SPL squad. What is there to lose? Let's come out here and have some fun and see if we can make some waves. And Miff, I love the way adapting's mind works, and he picks up a Susano. Some stylistic plays maybe potentially here in game 1, but if nothing else, a team with nothing to lose is always a bit threatening.
And just to speak to that mentality, that is a two-sided coin. On the other side, the Tartarus Titans, they're not unaware of the situation. They come and they say, we're the heavy favorites. We've got the better practice. We're in the SPL. A lot of people didn't even expect us to have to play through this event. So in a situation like that, I'd had the opportunity to speak with Aggro, and Lord knows anytime I can invoke Aggro, I'm going to. He had said, in a situation like this, if he's the Highland Ravens, and I tend to agree, take this game as long as humanly possible, take it to 40 minutes, post up on the Fire Giant, and just stand there and hope that that pressure starts to mount against the Titans, force them into some errors.
That's right. Worth mentioning that a lot of the conversation in mid-December was around the EU SEC teams and North American SEC teams and their play styles. Saw a bit of that from the Highland Ravens. Some of those matches went long. Actually, we only had one set that felt like it went like egregiously long over in EU. They picked up the pace from what we're used to seeing. But Cyno wants to get aggressive early here, maybe considering stealing away some of the jungle. And I think worth talking about Cyno's pick here, Myth, as Cozyx will get pulled back by Aror. Stuart will add a bit of good damage, but Coast Dash is in. That's brought out the med from Cozyx, a double taunt through, and a root onto Aror. My goodness, the minions were doing a lot of damage there as well. But it looks like Aror will live to fight another day. Love the aggression early here in the dual lane from Coast and Cozyx.
Just really good timing from the Ravens duo to pick their spot. Realizing Cozyx going to tick over to 2 first, gets access to that taunt, keeps the pressure up on Aror. Aror does at least hold on to the meditation though, so if another fight does happen, should heavily favor the Tartarus Titans, a little bit more in the tank insofar as a small skirmish. But it's very difficult in a situation like this to reestablish pressure. Even with piercing auto attacks from Stu, VaporishCoast has just got the bully potential on this Cern. Might make it difficult, barring a gank, for the Titans to really start moving up aggressive.
Love the counter pull there from Cozyx, so Auror's cooldown gets reset, can use it again a second time, but avoids the initial pullback in. Do you want to talk a bit about Cyno's pick here, though, Myth? Because remember, when Cyno first joined this Titans team, what were you saying? It was a lot of Nem, a lot of Chalk, and a lot of Naja, right? And I remember our conversations ended up being, like, surely there's got to be something else here, right? The Chalk wasn't working out, the Naja was basically always banned, then the Nem was sort of hit or miss for Cyno, and we were like, all right, well, you know, like, they're just playing with him. They probably told Cyno to just pick his comfort picks. We'll see what happens in future weeks. We're a month down the road now, and we're still seeing Nemesis, so clearly this is a type of pick that even when the team has had more time, has still been working out.
I think Nemesis really simplifies some of your late game engagements as well. So simple for Cyno to walk into a fight and say, whoever you see get slammed by my ultimate, that is the ultimate target. I want everybody on this guy. Makes it very easy to coordinate some of these attacks. And when you look at how the fights are going to start for the Highland Ravens, I really like how Nemesis, I suppose, counter-initiates as well. Kana goes in with the dazzling offensive. You don't have defense anymore, bud. Right. Stick around and we'll find out. Or Cozyx dash taunt. You don't have defense anymore, bud. Stick around and find out. So could be that the Tartarus Titans do look for a bit more of a counterpunch style with a composition like this, which is no stranger to them. They're very used to playing that slower, make a mistake, punish you heavily style of play. And then you've got really good tools to keep people locked down post-initiation as well. SOT with the Pillars of Agni, Aror with a pull-in too. I like how this Titans draft lines up, but if the Highland Ravens establish a lead, it could be scary.
Sot goes beneath the Tier 1 tower, Jet Stream applied, and Adapting's back in! and first blood for the king.
What?
Back on land, and Cyno desperately trading the damage, but he's got it. He turns it. I didn't think he had it there for a moment, and Cyno goes kill for kill, but it's adapting for first blood for the Highland Ravens, and Paul will flex his muscles over in mid. He'll dive angry and give the Titans an advantage.
I was so certain the action was going to be in mid and mid alone, but somehow, some way, Sot forces a fight on the right simply by dashing into a tower. Not the pacing you'd expect from a Hades. Not exactly recommended. Not a recommended play there, no, at least not from me. Now you got Book of Thoth. You can start stacking up a little bit more easily. Fortunately for SOT, Cyno nearby at least able to make sure nobody pulls too far ahead. Paul gets himself a kill, gets himself a red buff as well.
That's right.
That's stifling. That's really scary. Now the Highland Ravens, sure, you strike pay dirt in the solo, but someone's going to have to deal with Paul.
That levels up the gold as well for the Titans. That extra kill brings us back to even. Yeah, where the Ravens had a really nice pace going. There's a half a level for a bunch of the members of the Highland Ravens. I like it from adapting. Unfortunately for adapting, Cyno right on time rotates through and trades that kill back. I think we need to see more of that from Paul Miff, not only in this set.
Nice.
Thanks. Not only in this set against the Highland Ravens, but all weekend long. I think it's been a player who's had confidence, but hasn't been able to express it properly over some of the phases here this year. Plays like that, I'm diving in, I'm trying to solo kill off Angry, only means good things for the Titans. You're talking about Worlds Paul, right? Worlds group stage Paul potentially here this weekend. Love the set pick, and I think it gives an opportunity to flex those muscles a bit.
And even just watch how Paul's been maneuvering the map. So far, Cyno's been hovering in the jungle pretty consistently. Hasn't leached too much. A lot of that neutral farm's been going to Paul as well on his own. Just funnel the farm into your set, and those solo kills will continue.
Oh, it's got the jet stream on top, but adapting this time won't go back in. The assassin, double assassin composition here from the Titans, Miff, could make life difficult for Angry and VaporishCoast later on in the game. How important do you think it's going to be to get on this Agni? How difficult do you think it might be to get on this Agni later on in the game? Because we know, one kill down, not out of anything just yet. Going to take some time to build things up. But later on in the game, Agni bombs totally decimate health bars. Got to imagine positioning for Angry is going to be key importance when Cyno and Paul are both on assassins.
Yeah, once you get to the latest portions of the game, it's not so much about how difficult is it to jump onto Agni. It's not necessarily difficult at all, especially with this heavy dive composition from the Titans. Not just your double assassin, but the global presence from Stu. Yep. SOT's a diver as well. Hades, essentially just another magical assassin that happens to be incredibly tanky while ulting. Means that you'll get to the Agni. It's what can Angry accomplish before that happens. Are you starting the fight by tossing out a bomb stun, double bomb combo that's dropping one of these carries to 50%, and then disengaging and dragging the Tartarus Titans as far into the Highland Ravens side of the map as possible? If that's the case, that's nearly ideal situations, because the counter engage of the Ravens, similarly to the Tartarus Titans, is also incredibly strong. For the most part, expect Cxnnahh to be starting the fight with Dazzling Offensive, but that'll open up the door for Cozyx to stick around that backline, use Confound more so as a peel tool or adapting in these narrow jungle corridors with the Typhoon. Make it very difficult for the Tartarus Titans to stick to their targets. So for now, I think it would be of the Tartarus Titans' best interest to continually put pressure onto Angry, slow down some of that damage, and then keep it easy as you start to move into that late game.
Angry goes right into Divine Ruin. Whereas there's a lot of stacking items for the Tartarus Titans here, and Miff, you talked earlier on about maybe aggro's mentality around the composition for the Ravens. Push this game a bit longer on, see if you can pull out coin flip FGs later on in the game, really make the Titans think about it. At least for now, the pace is going to slow down a little bit for the Titans with all the stacking that needs to be done. The Crusher for Cyno. The one holdout as far as stacking goes here. On the flip side, Golden Blade, Brawler's Beat Stick, Divine Ruin. So a couple instances of anti-heal very early on in the draft here, Miff. Obviously, you expect Hades to need to have some anti-heal applied, but we scrap over in mid. Cozyx will dash back towards his jungler. So a little bit of damage traded back and forth, but 3v3 not committed on by either team.
It's a valuable trade for the Highland Ravens. Taking those beads off of Paul, so important. all of a sudden, even though you're still playing at a slight level deficit in mid, Angry can feel much, much safer. The self-peel potential of the Noxious Fumes through the roof so long as those beads are down. And then potentially just kill potential as well. I mean, just have Cozyx rotate back through, do it all again. This set doesn't have the strongest disengage if you can catch him before the leap. It still is one of the largest leaps in the game, but you catch him beforehand. Bomb stun combo, Typhoon, pull potential, CC chain from the Highland Ravens could make it very difficult for Paul.
You know, I think if you're the Ravens or their fans or anyone who's just cheering for upsets here this weekend, you're not terribly sad about the way that the first 10 minutes of this game have gone. Now, the Titans, at times, have set really fast paces in their games. This one, not one of those just yet, where the Highland Ravens have stabilized. But Cxnnahh, despite some pressure from Sot, has maybe even pulled a slight level lead over the Hades. Angry, despite dropping a solo kill earlier on, now back into a just a fine spot on this Agni, feeling okay. And Coast has been applying pretty steady pressure to Stuart. Remember, Myth, in the waiting room, in just some of our side conversations, we put some emphasis on this dual lane. It's the dual lane of the Titans who are now going to start the first Gold Fury of this set, and it looks like just going to get traded out for the Pyromancer and the Highland Ravens. You take it if you're the Titans. The Ravens simply not looking for the coin flip.
Yeah, I suppose Highland Ravens take both Greater Scorpions as well as the Pyromancer. Yep. Keeps the trade a little bit closer to even. Smart response from the Titans, though. Hey, there's 4 people on our Greater Scorpion. They're almost assuredly going to go for the other one. Almost assuredly going to go into the Pyromancer as well. So move over towards that Gold Fury and remove the opportunity for the Ravens. Because I was about to say, this is looking like a pretty decent itemization difference between these hunters that should favor the Ravens around a Gold Fury fight. Shadow Steel in first slot for Vaporish means you've already got access to crit, which means you just absolutely shred not only your direct lane opponent, but also objectives. Whereas on the other side, Stu, I like to pick up a little bit more tank shred, kin size in that first slot.
Yep.
Surprised to see it. You get taunted by Cozyx. Cozyx essentially signs his own death warrant. Cxnnahh as well, if you're worried about that initiation, you could deal with him a little bit more easily, but I feel like that portion of the game is going to be a little ways off considering the pace that both of these teams have set so far. Maybe you are a little bit more concerned about that direct lane matchup. And if that's the case, VaporishCoast, who's already nursing a lead, has also just got the itemization advantage. I don't think Stu can fight him anymore.
Well, one thing we've talked about a lot with this Highland Ravens team is always feeling like Coast has something in the back pocket, right? How many EU SEC games have we watched the Ravens play where they're down and out and then suddenly Coast is like a double, triple, quad, something like that later in the game and things stabilize out? Have to consider that in a matchup like this. Cyno wants to answer it,
wow.
But what a taunt from Cozyx. Coast has turned around the damage, but Aror rotates through the rest of the jungle up to the sky. Goes Stu, the extra prots help out. Coast adapting from range, drops Cyno, and it's the Highland Ravens ahead initially, but the Titans in Stuart able to punch right back in a chaotic brawl over the purple buff.
Man, that fight starts so perfect for the Highland Ravens. Cozyx sets up the taunt just as perfectly as you could hope for. Just catches that initiation, double taunt at that. You get a massive transformation for VaporishCoast as well. And the Titans essentially just have to spin their wheels while they wait for that CC to fall off. Meanwhile, all that damage applying. But then a couple of small stumbles from the Titans maybe make it a little bit more even as well. Stu doesn't connect with all the ultimate shots. Allows VaporishCoast to reset himself slightly. Fortunately for the Titans, VaporishCoast, maybe his one Achilles heel is that is a very, very confident player. He is not concerned about his HP pool whatsoever. Cost him his life here. Actually decides to just step back up. Stu lines up the autos through the wall, makes it real simple. I'm thinking that should have been a 1-for-0 trade for the Ravens. The Tartarus Titans a bit lucky.
That gives the Titans the level discrepancy back now over in the dual lane. Stuart able to bring things right back where VaporishCoast was controlling the dual lane for the first 13 or so minutes of this game. A nice fight back as all things stabilize. And these two teams clearly, Myth, neither jungler outside of a fight over in the dual lane clearly okay with slowing down the pace of this game. So I wouldn't be surprised if we don't see another big fight for the next couple of minutes of this game, potentially over a buff again. But we might be steamrolling towards Pyro, Gold Fury trades for a little while.
Look at how the level deficits have shifted, though, Dave. we were talking about a level lead for VaporishCoast. Duo lane was looking good for the Ravens. Stu's got the lead back, 14 to the 13. But maybe more importantly, Aror has already ticked over to 12 and fully upgraded that second relic.
Aror's caught back up. Coast uses the beads. Stuart caught out by the Wild Hunt, adapting double pull. Aegis for Stu. Won't counter out the Typhoon, but he gets up into the air just in time. Coast has to dash away. This is 5 members of the Highland Ravens over on the left side of the map. Paul's gonna rotate in from mid here as well, a blink away from Cyno, and Stuart clinging to life. Rolls back away beneath the tier 1 tower. Thinnest of margins, health advantage to the Highland Ravens, but no kills drop.
Surprised the Highland Ravens decided to disengage there with that 5 stack. And with Stu so low, I feel like you could have stuck to him a bit more there. Finish him off post Aegis after landing, but the Tartarus Titans show up in numbers with 4. SOT was slow on the rotation. Actually just walking from his fountain was just enough threat, I suppose, from the Titans to keep the Highland Ravens from sticking around. Gold lead largely equalized, but power spike certainly there. I'm keeping my eyes on SOT. Bancroft's already, now Polynomicon as well. We talked about that Hades burst. He's got it.
That's going to be chunky, and that's where some of the anti-heal as well for the Highland Ravens comes into play. Brawler's Beat Stick, Divine Ruin, something we mentioned earlier on, but now Shadow Steel for Coast since the last time we had that conversation. Curious about Aurora's power spike here, though, Miff. You've talked about the double upgraded relics immediately into Emperor's Armor, and I'm used to seeing it when a team is far and away ahead and playing aggressive, or far and away behind and fighting defensively at this point in the game underneath their towers. Does this give you any indication for how the Titans want to play, or is it just a good item in general?
I mean, the stat stick on Emperor's Armor is just fine. That passive, though, it's going to be a while, I think, until we see the full value of it. Neither one of these teams exactly in a state where you feel like sieging, so maybe had it been a slightly more aggressive composition or even a double hunter composition from the Tartarus Titans, I'm thinking to myself, sure, even state, Emperor's Armor, go ahead and siege anyway because your composition's built around it. As of now, maybe it's more so Aror saying, look, we've got a double assassin draft. If we are finishing our kills, it's based off dive, and we will probably have to dive into those towers. I'm curious to see how this one pans out.
Oni Fury picked up by the Tartarus Titans, and the Highland Ravens will rotate to the Pyro. So it should be Oni Fury to the Titans. It is. Paul in range to steal the Pyromancer, but instead it's an initiation from Cozyx. But adapting doesn't have enough damage. We'll send out the Typhoon defensively. That allows the Highland Ravens to get the Pyromancer. So we were somewhat correct here, Miff, where there is some fighting over the purple buff. Didn't result in too many kills one way or another. But again, the second rotation of these neutral objectives is just Oni Fury traded out for the Pyromancer. Highland Ravens not wanting to risk what is largely an equal game here at the 17-minute mark.
Man, the game sense from Aror right there, Dave, just sniffs out the rotation, I suppose. I'm dead to rights every single time. Just a heat check from the Tartarus Titans. Pull the fire.
It's hot.
You know for a fact that Aror was under threat over there. He'd communicated to his team, look, there's a couple of guys around me. Maybe could be an opportunity to look at the Giant. It wasn't exactly the largest opportunity. So reset it, but nothing ventured, nothing gained, and nothing lost in that small exchange either. But the Titans maintain their grouping on the right-hand side. Similarly to how when SOT rotates out towards Duo, that's when Gold Fury happens. If Stu's here, this is a real attempt at the fire.
Stu is here. Again, this one's going to be somewhat slow. I mean, you're only 17 and a half minutes in. Stu is
no crit.
3.5 slotted with no crit. So it's going to be a slow burn, but maybe angry now the target. Cyno underneath the tier 1, no chance. And there's your Emperor's Armor for Aror paying off. Adapting wants to trade back. Will. Cyno drops and trade.
Ooh.
Skewers from Paul means dive. Hello, Adapting. And goodbye in the same sentence as Paul will back away with the second kill of the fight for the Titans. SOT still with Pillars of Agony. Looks like he'll get stunned out. Uses the pillars, but it's got to be a dash away. So many low health bars here. And no ultimate from Stuart to send those snipes down. Again, a close trade, but the Titans, that one extra kill on advantage.
The Titans just playing with a bit more confidence right now. Proactive on map. Pull the fire, say, you coming here? No, then we're coming to you. Catch you out in that mid lane. Angry must have dashed. And that's got to be why the Tartarus Titans make that call. I didn't see it on map, but the fact that we didn't see the dash in his own tower, I think pretty indicative of what had happened there. Tartarus Titans find their pick, but a phenomenal rotation from Adapting, target selection as well. at least make sure that Cyno pays for it with his life. Had Cyno made it out alive, it's very likely we see the Tartarus Titans just reset the base, group up on fire, and take it for themselves. Or maybe even had Stu elected to build towards crit, it would have been a fire giant. Regardless. Instead, the Tartarus Titans take their small win. Now reset once more. I'll be keeping my eyes on Stu. Wherever he is, I think that's where the Tartarus Titans will put their focus.
Right now, it's just clearing waves over in duo. Cozyx will send a taunt towards Paul. Kana dashes forward again. This is where some of that poke damage really makes a difference. Angry has added a lot of burst in his build since the last time we've been able to just see and really zoom in on a little bit of poke. Charon's Coin and the Soul Reaver. Myth, they don't want to wait for the 35 minutes. The Highland Ravens want to pull Fire Giant now and see where the Tartarus Titans position themselves. Paul's still beneath tier 2 in mid. This one also a heat check, though. And the Ravens will drop the FG, not liking their odds to just pull it in the face of the Titans. That's likely a game-ending, type of call if the Titans are able to steal it away and grab a couple of kills. Not worth the risk. And end up backing away. I will say, when Adapting was trying to trade out onto Cyno, I was like, why is this kill taking so long? Looks like it's a bit of bruisery itemization added into the build here for Cyno, maybe sensing needed some help in some of these trades and initiations.
And it's already so difficult to deal with Nemesis with a defense steal from the ultimate, with a health shield in that third ability as well, so a little bit of defense towards the tail end of the build. Never hurt anybody either. Should allow Cyno to match maybe some of that presence we see from SOT as well. Just, hey, let's both get into that back line. We're both going to be pretty survivable, and you've got just enough damage output to threaten some of these carries.
I do think worth giving a shout out to Kana here. Level 20, just over the 20-minute mark. Has been an absolute farming machine on the Amaterasu, and it's in a really strong spot. Upgrades the starter item, Golden Blade, Shoguns, Berserkers. Haven't gotten to see much from the Amaterasu just yet, but a decent little gold lead has built up over SOT. Now that level lead will matter less here in the next couple of minutes. But it really feels like Myth, where both of these soul laners, just the one assist, haven't been able to see much from either. Especially itemization-wise, both, I think, poised now at the 21-minute mark to make big impacts on the next fight.
But I'm so much more worried about the items that SOT is going to purchase than I am about what Kana's going for. For now, Amaterasu, we're adding defense, we're adding survivability. All right, you're already very defensive and you're already incredibly difficult to kill, whereas SOT is going to continually stack up more and more damage. And by the time he upgrades that Tainted Steel, he'll be defense stacked as well. Right. He'll be fully procced up, so maybe a little bit more power in the back pocket of the Tartarus Titans soul laner. A little bit more power spike coming his way. Whereas the Highland Ravens, they'd like to fight now.
Cozyx sends a taunt towards Paul, but they can't delete Paul. Paul's beads do just enough to set up Kana for failure. Snipes from Stu will make the difference here. They hit. Stuart drops the first. The Highland Ravens now down to 4, but the health bars not great for the Tartarus Titans. They've got to back away, adapting just above half HP. And this is maybe a preemptive play for the Ravens. That's maybe all they can get here on the right side of the map is that Pyromancer as the Titans regroup and maybe head back right.
40 seconds on Kana's respawn. Tartarus Titans go ahead and pull the Fire Giant. I think in a situation like this, just force the fight. The Highland Ravens need to respond.
They do. SOT, though, still Pillars of Agni. Paul still with the set all ready to go. Now Angry, a chance to steal from range. Remember, that's what an Agni brings you. Here comes the Pillars from SOT, and it's got Cozyx. Should be one here for the Tartarus Titans, and it is. VaporishCoast now desperately backpedaling away, but no chance. And the Titans simply too clean on the right side. They play their advantages perfectly. And you were feeling good about an FG pull a moment ago. I think you're feeling even better here if you're the Titans. Maybe after a reset or just using your numbers advantage. Adapting, dropped by SOT. And that'll be an FG pull here eventually for the Titans.
And that's the concern for this Hades. That's what Hades brings that Amaterasu can't. SOT can sit in a little stealth field and wait for literally anybody to walk up. It could be Cozyx, it could be Kana, the tankiest targets of the Highland Ravens, and he's going to do upwards of 50%. Unfortunately, it was Adapting, who would have likely died from 100 in a situation like that, and even loses out on the beads on respawn. So 2 minutes till he's got CC immunity available to him. The Tartarus Titans have just played this 19 to 23 minute mark just a bit better. keep the Highland Ravens off balance, pull the Fire Giant once more, and you've got the exact same advantage as you did previously.
Can kind of make some magic happen. Now 3,000 gold down. Hasn't been able to get it done just yet. Fire Giant low. Angry drops the bombs, but the Titans able to shrug it off. It's a 3-man stun for Cxnnahh, and that'll help with disengage. But is it enough to fully disengage? Stu just needing one more. Won't have the range or the shot to get it done onto Cxnnahh. And the Tartarus Titans, the SPL squad, pull the biggest advantage we've seen so far at the 24-minute mark.
And now we get to see what that Emperor's Armor is all about. You know, these towers going to be a little bit slower.
We saw one dive earlier on. Remember, it was on Angry. It was just the one. But now, really, with the siege.
Was Aror even there for that one? He must have been.
He came in late.
Yeah, he
swooped through after the fact.
You know, great decision-making here from the Tartarus Titans again. This is something that you really see from the SPL. So often we'll see the teams go for Gold Fury in a situation like that. Hey, we already got the Fire Giant. Why leave it up to risk? We've won a couple of team fights, haven't reset. It's probably a good deal of gold in pocket for each individual member of the Titans. But they're, again, keeping the Ravens off balance.
Oof. Hello, says Cyno, over towards Angry. The Phoenix sending out some damage. Cyno actually somewhat low. Typhoon doesn't get the knockups. Cxnnahh, oh my goodness, he's getting melted by Stu. Cxnnahh and Cozyx, you called it, Myth. I mean, these tanks have stepped forward and just melt under the pressure of this Ram and Stu, and the rest of the Titans has been so difficult to get a good, consistent initiation from the Ravens.
Now grab yourself a Gold Fury. That gold lead that was already stacking up, even further compounded. The Tartarus Titans siege potential, absolutely ridiculous. Even if Stu dies, again, I know I've been harping on it so much, but Hades is your siege again. He could just use that Polynomicon to slowly, and it's not exactly slow, burst damage into some of these structures and work through the entirety of the map. So much time left on this Fire Giant power play as well. 2 entire minutes with a buff around the waist of all 5 members of the Tartarus Titans. The Highland Ravens are going to have to figure out something on this defense. I'm keeping my eyes on Cozyx. He has been so important in every single initiation for the Highland Ravens. Every fight that has gone well has been off the back of a 1- or 2-man taunt from Cozyx, the follow-up from Angry from a range, or Adapting's ability to chase out and finish off some of these kills. Could be the difference maker, but the strategy of, all right, we're looking for a 3-man Typhoon, we're looking for a multi-man taunt, and try and separate the fight, is a little bit more difficult to execute on in your Phoenix, because the Tartarus Titans are going to be grouped up as 5 every single time, or worst case for the Titans, grouped up as 4. Means that the damage output from Paul with the pokes from Skewer, or the return CC threat of SOT or Aror might dissuade the Highland Ravens, or more particular, Cozyx, from actually starting these fights.
Wonder if the Ravens gotta find some magic here. I mean, the Titans have now knocked down all but just the mid lane tier 2 tower. And you mentioned it just a moment ago, that the Titans in a lot of our SPL, if not all of our SPL squads, teams that will play down to the final seconds of their FG buff if they feel like they've got that advantage. So you could see just, you know, the Titans saying to each other right now, look, we've got 50 seconds, let's send one attempted dive in, but they don't have a minion wave here on left. And so not liking the chances. So it'll look like there'll be one more reset unless the Titans were able to catch the Highland Ravens a bit unawares, which they're not. Actually, don't mind that from the Ravens. They extend out. They know the Titans somewhere on the left side of the map. Let's see if we can pull away some jungle farm, itemize a bit more effectively. And in 25 seconds, the buff will fall off and we'll be heading into the next Fire Giant. Which, of course, then puts you in a real awkward spot here, Myth, where the Ravens, their map state right now is probably as good as it's going to get for the rest of the game. You don't have any fire minion waves to deal with. If you're going to step up and try to defend an FG, it might have to be this next one. You might not get another chance.
And significant power spikes should embolden the Highland Ravens stepping up to this Fire Giant. Soul Gem for Angry means that burst damage is a little bit there. You've got a little bit more sustain for your team as well, so long as someone's hanging out near you. Adapting has finished up a couple of his items as well. Should be able to have a bit more burst. That's an item we don't get to see too often anymore. I was certain it was going to be Bumba's Spear instead. Bumba's Hammer. Every time he lands those auto attacks, his non-ultimate ability cooldown is going to be reduced a bit, a little bit more HP sustain as well. I mean, it makes sense with just that Hydra synergy as well, but I think it would be very difficult for Adapting to actually find value from that passive.
Right, how long is he going to be alive?
How long are you going to be alive? How many auto attacks are you allowed to cast, right? It is going to be very, very difficult with the CC core of the Tartarus Titans. I think Bumba's Spear maybe suits him a bit better there. Just Typhoon, get that additional pen, get that additional damage, and hope that it's enough. I like this, though, from the Highland Ravens. Set up in the jungle, catch anybody walking up.
Well, the Titans know the Ravens are in the jungle. I'm not sure they know exactly where they are. Oh, this would be fantastic. It is. Adapting is picked off. Aror, but Adapting traded out by Cyno, and the Titans have flipped things right around. Cozyx left alone, and Stuart reminds him of it. Now the Titans can collapse in. Snipes from Stuart. Massive advantage. Cyno will chase down Cxnnahh. Paul does the same to Angry. And the Tartarus Titans withstand the dive. It's all but a deicide as Cxnnahh left running.
Just an unfortunate target that the Highland Ravens run into in the jungle. Had it been anyone but Aror, you grab your kill, you immediately disengage. But because you have to dedicate so much time to actually shutting down this Atlas, just allow the Tartarus Titans to rotate forward. The Highland Ravens had to stick nearby if they wanted to hit pay dirt on it. The Tartarus Titans make them pay. Phoenix, it'll go quick.
Might be able to win now if there's enough damage on Cxnnahh. Though the Phoenix takes just a half second to go down. Cozyx will have something to say about this, but Cxnnahh has got to find a value stun here with a dazzling offensive. It's on to Cyno, but Stuart still swinging away onto the Titan. A double taunt in slows the game down, but the game ends nonetheless, and the SPL squad will take game one.
The game was very, very even all the way until that 17-minute mark. And then the Tartarus Titans, for the first time, were able to group up as 5, actually start forcing some engagements around these objectives, and the Highland Ravens couldn't figure out their answer. That first Fire Giant grouping from the Tartarus Titans just put the Ravens off balance, and they never found it again.
Now remember, we were talking a lot about this Titans team, and where's their confidence going to lie? How is this team going to be feeling after what was a disappointing Phase 3 playoffs? Remember, we had heard some teams considering if it's that iteration of the Titans, they might be getting picked early on to play in the quarterfinals of the SWC. This was a cool, calm, and collected Titans team. Now, if you're looking at the Ravens, Myth, after game one here, there was some early pressure from that team. Adapting finds an early kill. Some of those early trades were really back and forth. There was some mid-game differences that ultimately makes the big swing here for the Tartarus Titans. So the SPL, they go 1-0 up on the SEC in this best of 3. We'll see if the Ravens can extend things out to a game 3. Game 2 coming up next.
Hello and welcome back to the SWC Group Stage. Game number 1 goes over to the SPL squad of the Tartarus Titans. And if you're a fan of the Tartarus Titans, or if you just want to pick up a jersey for any of your favorite SPL teams, you still have an opportunity to pick those up. If you go over to shop.hi-rezstudios.com/SPL, you can pick up one of our jerseys provided by our good friends over at Skull. So whether you're a fan of the Titans, a fan of the Dragons who have made it, a fan of the Kings, or any of the SPL teams, go ahead and pick up one of those jerseys. But because it is the winter season, you might be getting a little chilly out there, and you might want to wrap yourself up in a nice hoodie. The good news is we've also got hoodies provided for our SPL teams over by Skull. So remember to go to shop.hi-rezstudios.com/SPL and pick up a jersey and or hoodie for your favorite SPL team as we get ready to close out Season 9 and move in towards year number 10 for these teams as well. The Tartarus Titans took them a little while, Trelly, but they were able to get themselves through game number 1. It was a very close, probably first 15, 17 or so minutes of the game. But then as Myth pointed it out there, once we started getting to these fire giant dances, these fights around the Pyromancer, this is where we saw the Tartarus Titans start to shine. Yeah,
it just didn't seem like the team fight was all that solid. They were able to find some good picks, the Highland Ravens that is, but weren't able to translate that into actually winning the fight, whereas the Tartarus Titans, off the back of some massive damage from Paul on the set, was really able to dominate that late game. And I think Cxnnahh had a great performance on the Hades as well. There was one point where hiding in the fog was able to catch out adapting, trying to walk up to the fire giant. And once that pick came through, I really thought it wasn't going to look too good to try and come back. I also got to give credit to Stu. The early game, not the greatest. I mean, the Rama isn't going to dominate an early game against Cernunnos, especially when you're building the shred style of build as opposed to crit. However, the snipes were on point, and I think Stuart was always able to stay extremely safe, shred through the tanky targets as you want your ADC to do, but then go up top and hit those clutch snipes when they really needed them.
Yeah, and this Rama is something that's really kind of just recently kind of come back into the light for a lot of teams. Again, for a while it was the Cupid, Ishtar, Cernunnos. Those were your top 3 hunters, for every squad. Now I've been seeing this Ram come back through, and I've been loving the performance we've been seeing out of those through SOT. A little bit of a stumble early on in the game, but once this Hades started to get a couple of items through, really did turn things around for the Tartarus Titans. 4-0 for Paul in the mid, 3-0 for Stuart. So undying carries for the Tartarus Titans does make it difficult for the Highland Ravens, but pushing through game number 1 and now in towards game number 2, it kind of then begs the question, Charlie, of what adaptations are made by the Ravens. You look at those first couple of bans out there. The Cxnnahh makes sense, keeping that one out of Cyno's hands.
Yep.
But then it was Hell and Vulcan. And as you kind of mentioned earlier, Hell maybe not the most optimal mage to be played right now.
Yeah, I think it's clearly the Ravens are fearing Paul, how much influence he can actually have on the map. But the thing that I feel is different between the Hell and the Set is they both have incredible damage, but Hell dies, right? Hell can be dove. Set is extremely difficult to kill. He has so much range with that Sandstorm, so in my mind, that could be something the Highland Ravens look to try and deal with, as well as, I mean, Stuart late game on the Rama was very deadly. Those could be 2 ways they want to look to try and get rid of. I wouldn't even be surprised at the Hades ban at this point. There's a lot that the Tartarus Titans did really well there.
We'll see what changes do get made as we jump to the picks and bans for game number 2 with the Highland Ravens and the Tartarus Titans. The Ravens will stick to their guns, at least starting out, by banning the Cxnnahh away from the Titans, making sure that Cyno doesn't get one of his power picks over into the jungle, which could make things even worse early game, because that's kind of a facilitator style of play, but it's also almost like a secondary carry as well. It's like a facilitate early, carry late game style of pick for Cyno. So seeing that one banned away, no surprise. And then the Hades, something that SOT was able to run with at the end of the game. Tartarus Titans will not have the option to go back towards there, but still a little bit of focus towards adapting. The Thor and the Dodgy, once again, need 2 bans.
Let's see if it's the Vulcan or the Hell here for the Ravens. That's got to be the option. There's no way they're fearing the Set because they know how good Paul's Set is. That's no secret. They had to have studied that up at the slightest. Wow, they're going to say, I'm amazed, because if you're not going to ban the Set game 1, maybe they thought, hey, let's just see if it's all that, right? Maybe they knew the Set could be coming. Let's see if we can deal with it. Game 1, they could not. And that's it. They're like, okay, never mind. Forget that. He can have the Vulcan or the Hell, whichever one he wants. It's the Set that is the problem. So it looks like the Ravens are still going to try and grab that Cern for VaporishCoast, and that does leave open the Pele, and you got to imagine one of those mages Paul wants.
Very early Pele as well. I mean, we look back to the Tartarus Titans' history of picks for their jungle, and it's almost always been exclusively 10th pick for Cyno or 8th, 9th pick, depending on what side he is on. So Pele this early on for the jungler means Tartarus Titans want to make that adaptation early, not have to force Cyno to maybe go so deep in the God pool. But Cernunnos Maui on the opposite side for the Highland Ravens, the dual 8 rounded out, and I'm maybe a little surprised we're just now seeing the Maui considering how prevalent he was with both the EU and the NASCC qualifiers.
Yeah, I didn't hate the Athena. I think it had some good taunts and the global presence, but it seems like the Ravens want a little bit more clear engage, safer engage, whereas you don't have to commit your body by dashing in to get that taunt. You just get the landfall, right? You can just pull in everyone on the side of the Titans if you're positioned correctly, get some beats down, and more specifically, that great early pressure that Maui can bring, especially if you're able to grab the Indra Scepter, which the Ravens did have good pressure throughout the early game. It's going to be the Nemesis and the Pele. So to me, that says Pele mid for Paul is more likely what we're going to see here. Just because he likes that pick. Anytime I see Paul in ranked, it's very rare, but when he does slam ranked, it's Pele mid or some other assassin. With Set gone, I would not be surprised if that's where the Pele goes.
Yeah, you know, there was a thought in the back of my mind there for a moment that maybe we did see this Pele go over to Paul in the mid lane, kind of depending on where the rest of the picks went through, so that seems to at least be the case for the Tartarus Titans. So Pele, Atlas, and Nemesis, a lot of dive for the Tartarus Titans immediately out the gate. Baba Yaga on the opposite side for the Highland Ravens. So a little bit of late game scaling with their mid laner this time around. The Agni did fine for Angry throughout the early game, did get picked by the set, but now this Baba Yaga to kind of go and really force more of late game than anything else. Amaterasu and Tyr do eat 2 bans from the Tartarus Titans in the second wave, and then a Rom ban for the Highland Ravens with the Cernunnos already picked up and the other top 3 of the Ishtar taken out. A couple of bans over towards Stuart.
Yeah, would not be surprised if the Cupid was the last pick that they'd want to go to, but it looks like just banning the Donza Burrow. They're not afraid of the Cupid. A lot of dashes that could be crippled out here, but it's one of those picks that, again, does come on more towards the late game. Cupid does get that extra scaling just by leveling up his dash, so has some great hard carry potential. Definitely something the Titans could look towards. However, I do want to talk about the Baba Yaga v Pele matchup. I don't think it's the easiest. I mean, we saw Paul get very active in the early up against the Agni, right? Agni has a dash, and then he's kind of stuck, whereas Baba Yaga has the knock-up immunity in the pot. You can just sit there and say, hey, I don't really care about Pele's knock-up, as well as you go into the house after that volcanic lightning, you're going to get some good damage separation. You're going to be able to knock that Pele away and say, hey, I get this extra shield, I'm not going to care. Late game, of course, Pele can just blow through that shield. She doesn't matter. But early on, I think, a little bit extra safety here for Angry, trying not to get soloed out in the early.
So now with the bans done, and Cupid locked in for the Tartarus Titans, that gives us the dual lane of Maui Cernunnos versus Atlas Cupid. Final pick reserved for SOT for the Tartarus Titans. Ravens still need to pick up their jungler and their soul laner. So what will they pick to try and face off against Sot? Amaterasu still on the table. That was something... Oh, no, not taken away. I was going to say that was something that was picked up last time, at least for solo, but that was banned away along with the tier. So then I do wonder where the solo will go for the Highland Ravens. It really feels like Tyr Ama have kind of been the top 2 for the EU SCC, and with the Hades banned away, it kind of removes that top 3. Anything maybe stick out to you, Charlie, for a pickup?
I think just something with CC could be the option. That's usually the call as is. You've got these 2 hard carries with the Cernunnos and the Baba, so, you know, Ama did provide that level of CC, that level of the Dazzling Offensive is going to pull beats. Anything that can do that extremely well. For example, the Kakolin has a good knock-up potential. That could be an option to get some early pressure. Kind of gets beat by the extra bit of prot shred that Atlas and Nemesis bring, so you're not going to be as tanky. That sort of hurts. You always could go to a Guardian as well. We know the Yorm, for example, is something that the EU SCC likes to go to in that solo lane. You build a little bit more damage, but still can be annoying. Looks like the tried and true Bellona is going to be the option. You see a lot of auto attackers. It's going to be a safe bet nonetheless.
So Bellona, Raven for the final 2 of the Highland Ravens, adapting something maybe a little bit earlier in the game to fight with up against the double assassin. And also just some extra safety, double CC immunity into the kit. Bellona maybe for some late game setup with that Eagles rally. So it's going to provide a little bit of CC, but maybe not as much CC as you were talking through. Does this Highland Ravens composition maybe have some of the tools to face off early with the Tartarus Titans like we saw last game, or is this more of a late game scaling Ravens comp?
This is definitely a late game scaling Ravens comp. You're looking to try and focus out Paul in the early if you can with the Baba Yaga and the Raven, because Baba, with her extra passive, with the fact that she's going to be stacking up, it's actually really difficult to find a kill on a Baba Yaga in the early, because you can actually take your dash level 2, and that pretty much makes sure that you're not dying. As long as you have the house nearby, you've got 2 health potions on lock just waiting for you. So there's plenty of ways to play early game just fine here for the Ravens, but look at their damage dealers, right? The Baba is not going to come online till, 3-4 items. Cernunnos can build crit and get active in the early, but up against the Cupid, you better be holding your beads for Fields of Love, or especially warding up, making sure Cyno's not in the corner, about to gank you. So it seems to be the Ravens have taken that same style of approach where, yeah, we've got that pressure. We have adapting on the Robin. He can get active,
Athena.
but we're also fine with playing for level 20, 20 minutes into the game, 25 minutes into the game. That's when we're going to fight a Fire Giant.
So the Athena that was support for the Ravens last time now might be flexing potentially between support and solo for the Tartarus Titans. So we saw the Atlas from Aror last time around with the Athena locked in. Now for the Tartarus Titans, gives some global pressure for this team. And also kind of skews some of these team fights, whether that be the support or the solo. Do you have a preference for the Titans on this Athena? Would you rather see this one go over to SOT in the solo lane, or do you think that this one would be better in the hands of Aror?
Yeah, I definitely prefer the Athena in solo here. I mean, Sot's been liking it as well. Notably, he only played the Atlas like twice. It worked out, but it's been a while, right? Whereas the Athena, he's been going to time and time again, has some great damage, as well as if you get teleport and Defender of Olympus, you can sort of ult to the left side of the map, help your team in a team fight, and then immediately teleport back, and you don't even miss a wave, right? If you play this Athena smart, like we know Sot can, it can be extremely annoying to deal with, right? You say, hey, Athena's going for blue buff guys, and they're like, wait, Athena's here. Wait, Athena's back over in right lane again to defend Pyromance. Like, there's just so much mobility you can have. So I definitely prefer it in the solo lane, and I'd bet that's where it's going this game.
So for the Highland Ravens, talking a lot about late game, this Baba Yaga probably going to be getting at least 1, if not 2 stacking items through. The Bellona going to be aiming towards the late game. But this Ravana maybe is kind of an early game bridge for adapting. For the Highland Ravens, if you are adapting, are you trying to get active early, maybe in one of these side lanes to get a little bit of pressure for your team? Or is this just a comp that you're going to want to wait until that late game comes through and then try and win the fight then?
Yeah, I'm thinking if you're Robin, you have that ability to just wait till late game because you have incredible safety and dive, but you have great kill potential at level 2 and especially at level 5. So the side lanes need to watch out and definitely should be warding for that possibility of Robin showing up pre-level 5 as well as level 5. But it's not going to be easy to find ganks onto Paul. He's going to be playing pretty safely in the mid lane. You're probably looking towards duo or saying, hey, if SOT dashes on the wave, I'm going to be there as well. I'm going to be trying to get my soul laner ahead and play through that.
So double Guardian as far as the magical damage for the Tartarus Titans, double Assassin and a Cupid for physical. So a lot of potential shred once again. I mean, this is a composition that we talked about in game number 1 with the Atlas and the Nemesis. You double drop that ult onto a tanky target. Could easily try and blow up the HP bar of this Maui or even of this Bellona late game. For the Tartarus Titans, is this the comp that you want to see maybe get active a little bit earlier on, kind of like we saw in game 1, Trelly?
I mean, I think Paul is going to have a little bit rougher time doing so. I already highlighted how the Baba Yaga is a bit safer than the Agni in that regard, having the knock-up immunity as well as just being able to close gap and sort of knock the Pele away to bring the house down. So it's kind of like they could, but they probably shouldn't. They're playing for this late game as the team that's 0-1 at the moment, and they really don't want to make any mistakes. Waiting for level 20 towards an actual Fire Giant fight where you're relatively even or maybe 3k gold down, that's your threshold. I think that's probably the play style here the Ravens should be going for.
We'll see if the Highland Ravens can make their way through the early game, try and get to that late game. Again, the EU SEC, we've always talked about teams where once they can push past that 25 or so minute mark, that's when we really see the team fights going through. So for the Ravens, if they can kind of hold their ground, maybe get a few thousand gold either up or at least try and stay relatively even to that point, could be a good position for this team to be in, could be a great spot at least for the Highland Ravens team. Do you think that this is one that could be going over to game number 3, Charlie? Do you think that this might be a 2-0 for the Tartarus Titans?
It's rough. It's rough for the Ravens here. I think the Titans got pretty much everything they wanted. They knew eventually the set was going to get banned, and to get Pele instead is not a problem, right? Paul can do that same level of damage late game as well as the amount of safety. I talked about how safe set is. Pele's just as safe. She can use that Volcanic Lightning, get in, get out. You can go into Blink. You don't really have to worry about Aegis. And as long as you're able to just, use that movement speed to run away, shouldn't be that much of an issue. However, I am excited to see Stuart on the Cupid versus the Cernunnos, because last game it was Rama Cernunnos, right? And Coast kind of owned that lane for a fair bit. You're not fighting into Cernunnos as Rama early on, especially if you're not building into crit, which Stuart wasn't. This time around, though, Fields of Love does add that extra level of, hey, I could fight. I could step up to purple buff. I don't have to just sit back and make this a farming lane. So I'm excited to see some sparks fly over in that duo lane this time around.
Right, kind of that difference that you're talking about there. I mean, you go from having, okay, Rom went into the sky and I just had to have good juke boots to avoid some of the damage. Now you have a Fields of Love that's essentially going to force beads almost every single time on the Cernunnos, because, I mean, there's no CC immunity in the kit over there. So I think you're right to maybe highlight the change for the Tartarus Titans to get a more aggressive duo lane, something that they can fight Coast back. I mean, we walk back, we're watching the start of game number 1, and Coast is level 2 dashing up against the Tartarus Titans there, and really kind of alleviated pressure in the dual lane for the Ravens, allowed adapting to make rotations over towards the solo lane. Unfortunately for Angry, just kind of got dove on by Paul earlier on, but it was still able to kind of keep up in that farm. And that was something that the Highland Ravens, that I have to highlight for game 1, was even despite that the Highland Ravens were down in the team fights, even though that they weren't necessarily winning too many individual engagements, they were still holding on to their farm game fairly well.
Yeah, and that's another thing that possibly the Titans might want to play through. The fact that they now have this Athena on their side. We already know that Coast wants to get active. He wants to dash in. But you make one bad dash when there's an Athena on the map, and you're not alone anymore. you have dashed into a 1v1, and then you lost that 1v1.
Well, before we jump into game number 2, we do need to take a brief break, so we're going to throw it over to a break, and we'll be back in just a few minutes.
Remember, one of the big conversations we had, Miff, was how do the Titans look throughout the rest of this weekend? Game 1 was clean for that squad. They'll hope to cleanly close out this best of 3 up against the Highland Ravens. They've got a great draft, a unique draft to do it with. Where the Titans have been theory crafters of meta and individual picks since the inception of this roster. And it looks like game 2 here up against the Highland Ravens is going to be no different. Double Guardian, double Assassin, and then Stuart on the Cupid. So lots of physical damage, but also lots of setup and tankiness around their carries.
Yeah, I like both of these compositions a whole lot. I think the Des does a very good job of setting up how this duo lane could pan out, especially considering the pace of it in game 1. Stu has a much better matchup this time around. I feel like this Cupid has got the potential to at least box up against Vaporish. But a point that the Des had brought up that I hadn't even thought about during that game was, yeah, the Highland Ravens did establish a whole lot of pressure in that duo lane. We didn't see them play through it.
No.
First objective that went down was the Pyromancer on the opposite side. Could be the Highland Ravens look to rectify that if VaporishCoast is able to reprise that performance, have adapting rotate over there. Stu doesn't really have any way to deal with this Raven. The overhead kick just immunes Fields of Love every single time. Could be one lane that adapting can play through pretty consistently, because when you look at the rest of the map, sure, you've got a decent matchup into the Pele. Can't really be dealt with. No CC is going to stop that overhead kick. But Pele, again, with that Volcanic Lightning, incredibly safe. You would have to use your ultimate to chase out there. You don't really want to rotate over towards the Athena. Feels like she should be able to hold her own and survive pretty easily, especially come second item.
Yep.
So maybe that dual lane really the best opportunity for the Highland Ravens jungler.
Well, tough already for the Highland Ravens mid laner. Angry uses his beads just a moment ago, and it's just pressure from Paul. Walks forward, gets the knock-up, beads off of Angry. So level 5 for Paul here, remember, it was set into Agni, to a mage. And that looked good for Paul last game. Found a solo kill. Could do the same here in game number 2. Coast and Cozyx, again, getting things going early. Drop some low health bars, but over on right, a double taunt on a blue buff invade gone wrong, as the Titans have been able to lock down their own blue. Adapting in Cxnnahh, maybe feeling like Athena susceptible to early pressure here in the first few minutes of this game.
The standard answer to Athena is pretty similar to Cthulhu in that she doesn't have the best ability to fight early on, and it takes away one of her greatest strengths, which is being able to rotate over towards a fight on the opposite side of the map. But even then, just Raven does not have the damage output just yet. Maybe after first or second item, then you could put some threat on SOT. You're never really threatening Cyno either. I really would prefer to see a little bit more attention tossed over towards that duo lane, but maybe it's a catch-22. You rotate over towards duo, all of a sudden the Athena's done the exact same thing. You can't expect the same of a Bellona. A very difficult situation, I think, for the Highland Ravens to figure out where they want to funnel that aggression.
And I'm glad you talk a bit about the Athena here, Miff, because think about where Athena solo really started, and it was later on in phase 3, and it was SOT playing Athena solo, picked up the teleport, and totally changed the dynamic of that individual game. So I look towards SOT to repeat that style of game here. You know, this is a Titans team. You know, they have something to lose, as we've talked about them being the favorites. But now you got a little bit of cushion. You realize, all right, we should be favored to win here in game 2. And SOT the type of player that likes to make plays. So I'm going to look towards the Athena later on in the game. But you've put a lot of emphasis on adapting so far. I mean, this Raven pick, Myth maybe expected to find that impact. Post level 5, you got to bridge the early game to the mid game. You need to find aggression.
When you take a Raven into the jungle, you're not drafting for the late game. You're not drafting for 30-some-odd minutes. I'm looking at Raven from first item to third item. That's really his strongest portion of the match. You leverage a whole lot of safety from overhead kick. Your dive potential is very high. Your chase potential as well, incredibly strong before maybe some wing blades get picked up. That's slow, very stifling. You've got the root from a range as well.
Yep.
So I'm keeping my eyes on him to facilitate the late game. The term that JMac had used on the desk as a bridge for the rest of this draft, I think is just correct. You want to create space for this Baba Yaga so that she could stack up and deal that damage later on. So adapting certainly the emphasis for at least, I would argue, at least the first 15 minutes of the game.
I think what's unfortunate is we didn't get the opportunity to see the SCC powerhouse angry just yet, right? And in game 1, largely held in check on the Agni, was dove pretty consistently, as we've talked about. It's not going to get much easier on the Baba Yaga here, right? You got double Assassin on the other side, and then also double Guardian that you're going to have to be working around. And Athena's going to want to go in, and Atlas is going to want to find those pulls. But Angry plus Baba Yaga, it's a very synergistic player-god combo. Just going to require maybe some help. As again, already lost the beads. Cyno right back over towards mid. He's level 5. Maybe that last split wave makes the difference there. At level 5, though, Myth. Is that the time for Paul? Are you just throwing a heat check out there? Do you think this Pele has a realistic chance at a solo kill here in the first 3, 4, 5, 6 minutes of this game?
It's hard to bet against any assassin in mid, right? Like, is there solo potential? Absolutely. I would say that it might require a bit of a mistake from Angry. Home Sweet Home, the ultimate from Baba Yaga, giving over that HP shield as well as the knockaway, makes it pretty difficult for Paul to close gap with ultimate. I think he would have to hold on to Volcanic Lightning in response to the ultimate from Angry. And forcing that on your own, I think, going to be very difficult. If Cyno's there as well, we're out of solo kill territory, but all of a sudden that simplifies a bit. I think it could be a tumultuous matchup, especially considering the itemization that Angry has elected to go towards. I mean, I had really thought it was just going to be, let's take it to the late game, stack up a whole lot early, utilize the Baba Yaga passive, maybe a Warlock staff for some survivability.
Sure.
Instead, we're going down the restored artifact tree. Could be Charon's coin. Likely will be Charon's coin in this slot. Gives you over some penetration, gives you over a good deal of power, but survivability going to take a hit.
That's right, get those free stacks. As SOT jumped on. An ultimate from Cyno. Connects, but Highland Ravens not dissuaded. This will be a blue buff invade. Remember, the last one did not go so well. No kills, but the Tartarus Titans able to secure the blue. This time the Ravens send 3. Cozyx in the first big support rotation out of the duo lane will assist. Give a small nod to Cxnnahh, able to steal away the blue buff from SOT, who did pick up teleport this game. We've seen Athena solos without teleport. And it's felt a bit different, you know, because you really have to calculate your chances on big defender of Olympus's out, because you have to go back, walk back to lane. Feels like with this teleport, SOT might have a bit more freedom to make some of those plays happen. And a Runic Shield early here, Myth, so no Golden Blade for Cxnnahh. Despite it just being double Guardian, maybe sensing needs some assistance here in the early laning phase.
Yeah, a little bit of additional defense should allow him to be a bully in lane. It's not as if Athena has really got the most poke potential, though, and with just the sustain from Death's Toll and Scourge, feels like you probably could have gone Golden Blade to leverage pressure, but instead, Cxnnahh going to take a slower approach, realizing that this is a composition that is late game slanted. You want to play around that, so let's not make any stumbles happen throughout the early. Runic Shield's one way to make sure it doesn't happen, but with that said, will make it a little bit more difficult for Cxnnahh to rotate in a situation where rotations are going to be very important to this lane. It's very likely that SOT is going to try and get involved on the gold free within the next 5 or so minutes. Had Cxnnahh picked up Golden Blade, you get a little bit of movement speed, you're pressuring wave a little bit more consistently, you get the clear advantage, and then you can start your rotation proactively. Now it's, all right, I'm safe, but I'll be like 20 seconds behind SOT to the fight.
Right, well, it's a good shout, Myth. Teleport just now comes back from SOT, so it's just something to be mindful of. If you do start to see a big grouping from the Titans, chances are SOT will feel confident in rotating through.
Poor Stu.
An important storyline to continue along with, Myth, is that VaporishCoast and Stuart, when left alone in just the lane, 1v1, the supports have rotated out. Coast has consistently been finding pressure and a slight level advantage over VaporishCoast. That was game 1 and now here in game 2 as well. But what you were calling for is making something of it. What do we see? I mean, Coast is denying
Yikes.
Stu farm
That's embarrassing.
and being taunted on by the SEC player. Can the Ravens now convert that into something ends up being the question? Slight grouping over towards the Gold Fury. It'll just be the Oracles this time. Still too early in the game to really feel confident around it. And so you don't need this big swing, but you're hoping you're able to prop up VaporishCoast and maybe expand on that level lead with some team assistance.
But looking at the rest of the composition from the Highland Ravens, sure, Coast has got pressure. How do you leverage it? Are you capable at looking at the Gold Fury with a Baba Yaga out of mid or a Ravana in the jungle? It's not a standard auto attacker with mannequins, so DPS going to be lacking from adapting compared to maybe some of the contemporaries that he could have moved towards. Angry is going to really need some time to spool up on this Baba Yaga. I think VaporishCoast essentially can line up on that tower, stay there, throw out some poke, and Stu's going to say, word. I mean, there's just not much. You could maybe steal my purple, I suppose, but the Highland Ravens aren't even really putting attention on this side of the map. It's been blue buff invades for them. Yeah, I mean, Stu, sure, it's not a great look individually, but
Right.
I don't think it's going to have too many sweeping implications.
No, Stu might end up even picking up first blood here. Cozyx swings away. Wild Hunt used in the pullback, but Cozyx hung out to dry, and it's Aror with the ultimate. And that'll be first blood to the Titans. SOT is ulted over as well. Maybe not needed, doesn't matter. Has teleport, can get back to lane and pick up that wave. I was wondering if since SOT was here, that would have been an immediate Gold Fury pull, but not the answer from the Titans. He'll just take first blood, and it's Aror who nabs it.
Yeah, too early to look at the Gold Fury. Angry might not have DPS, but he's certainly got best confirmation on the map as of now, especially if he gets lucky with some of these concoctions. If it's a 5 red potion, nobody's beating it literally ever. So that looked to me to be a situation where SOT saw Paul line up against Angry and thought maybe Volcanic Lightning plus Defender of Olympus would have been enough. Unfortunately for SOT wasn't the case, but fortunately for SOT does have that TP available, should be able to get back to that lane and not miss out on too much farm.
Now, what I've missed on is even though it's Titans with first blood, the Ravens have been farming better. They're 1,000 gold up over the Tartarus Titans right now at the 10 or so minute mark. Not wide level gaps just yet, but if you look, Bellona, Cern, Angry, they're all
It's
above.
all Coast.
They're all above their counterparts, not by much, right? It's about 100 gold. Angry's up over Paul, but it's Coast that's 500-600 gold up over Stu, and then Cxnnahh about the same. So really between Soul Lane and ADC, that's where the Ravens have found their advantage. Unfortunately, they're on total opposite sides of the map, and so it doesn't really culminate in 1,000 gold immediately in any sort of team fight. Decent look though, and that's the advantage of having a lane opponent in Athena Myth, is that Cxnnahh, in the event that an Athena rotates out and doesn't get much for it, you've been left alone to farm up and melt down your tower a good bit.
Yeah, I mean, pressure in the tower, sure, certainly valuable. But a Soul Lane tower this early could just make it very easy for SOT to continually rotate out and say, hey, if you want to keep pushing, you have to approach the tier 2. And then all of a sudden the conversation becomes, is Cyno on this side of the map? If yes, massive threat because Cxnnahh has not exactly itemized to deal with any physical damage dealers. Cyno just a ton of damage output there, Paul as well. And interested to see what this next item is going to be for the Bellona. Going down the bow tree.
Yeah.
Just really sacrificing a whole lot of survivability, but we'll be able to generate threat against some of these squishier targets, and even up against Paul if it comes down to an auto attack battle. The disarm from Bellona, even in a Volcanic Lightning situation, is just going to be stifling.
That's unique from Cxnnahh. I mean, Runic Shield, don't often see it. Helps out the laning phase, and something in the bow tree. Remains to be seen. We'll touch base with that here in just a little bit. Now, the Highland Ravens, now we're in that territory for adapting, right? Brawler's Beatstick completed, halfway done with that second item. This is where we've laid at the feet of adapting. Okay, you're going to get 1 to 3 items. You need to start swinging. Maybe something here onto Aror, but Atlas going to be hard to kill off. The Highland Ravens have bought some time with Angry and scaling up Charon's coin, so maybe a bit later on into the game. But again, looks like just a Charon's coin for stacking right now, Myth. I'm so used to Thoth, Warlocks, all the things you've talked about earlier. Looks like just Charon's coin for now. The Highland Ravens, you know, they've got all these pieces that can help at different points in the game. Right now, it feels like it's Adapting's time. Later on, it's going to feel like Angry's time. But you wonder if the gold lead has had them hesitant to risk it. There's two different trains of thought. We got the lead, let's really push it, or we've got the lead, let's try not to throw it away.
I hate that second one. Love the first one. You got the lead, put that money into a sock and start hitting people with it, right? Like, it is... It
the
really
sock filled
is.
with dollar bills is it going to be doing?
Dude, this is the battleground
These are
of the
golden
gods.
coins.
Yeah, they're
right there.
drachmas, man. They're heavy. Start moving in towards objectives. Start forcing engagements because it is not a paltry sum that the Highland Ravens are holding right now. It is about 2,000 gold. Maybe you're concerned about the response. In the previous match, we had seen the Highland Ravens get a bit of control in the early game, and they'd moved in towards the Pyromancer, and the Tartarus Titans responded with the Gold Fury. Instead, play around your pressure. VaporishCoast has still been bullying Stuart consistently, and he has even itemized very well to deal with these objectives. Shadow Steel in second slot means you've got phenomenal crit potential. On neutrals, you've got even better 1v1, whereas Stu, sure, can deal with tanks, but tanks aren't going to be looking at him, at least not for another 5 or 6 minutes.
Take a veil.
Have the Highland Ravens rotate over towards the duo lane, look towards this Gold Fury, and force an engagement. The only thing that should be a point of contention there is the Soul Lane matchup. SOT can get involved very easily. But Cxnnahh has already established himself a lead. He can grab this blue, rotate out, SOT clears an extra wave, and it's still even, but you'll at least have the Bellona in the fight.
Instead, it's the Tartarus Titans pulling out the Gold Fury, and all of the Highland Ravens are over on the blue buff. So the Titans are going to pick up Gold Fury for free, but a blue and a Pyro to the Highland Ravens over on the other side. Again, an interesting, unique trade there maybe from the Highland Ravens. Normally, you're calling Gold Fury a bit more worth. Blue buff helps out. As Cxnnah's picked up Icavale here, Myth, ends up being the bow item that he's opted for. I suppose if you're going to be scrapping out a bit, it helps you in those fights, but definitely different from how the standard Bellona build goes.
Yeah, he's got a lot of boxing potential, not a whole lot of survivability. And if he's going to be one of the primary initiators for his team, which will likely be the case, Cozyx, of course, can do it on the Maui, but otherwise, it's going to be the dive of adapting a Cxnnahh. All of a sudden, you're a squishy target, and the Tartarus Titans would love to be able to lock down a post-Eagles rally Bellona. So surprised to see the Ravens, again, put so much emphasis around that soul lane. I think maybe they've psyched themselves out a bit with this Athena pick. Keep fights on the right-hand side. Athena will not outnumber us on the left. That has got to be the ideology from the Highland Ravens here. But the Tartarus Titans just grabbed the more valuable of the two neutral objectives once more. And if I'm VaporishCoast in a situation like this, it has got to be so frustrating. He has spent 15 uninterrupted minutes just shoving Stu into a locker, just taking his lunch money and putting gum in his hair, and nobody has come over to stop him. Nobody has come over to facilitate him. None of his fellow bullies have said, good job.
Right.
It's just the game happening elsewhere on the map.
Wow, and it might not even pay off for the Highland Ravens. Sot's going to get traded out by adapting, but a dive from the Titans under the Tier 1 tower. That's where a lot of this lead is built up with Cxnnahh. And Titans are able to go 1-for-1, maybe as good as it gets when Cxnnahh has a little bit of a lead there. So despite losing blues and losing Pyro, Titans get it done underneath the Tier 1. But my goodness, the damage from VaporishCoast is simply too much for Paul. But I'm not sure the Highland Ravens can get much done. Maybe they can. Cozyx pulls back onto Aror.
Good
and
pull.
one more yank back in gives Angry the fadeaway kill. And that's the Ravens tying up the kills at 15 minutes.
There's the answer for Coast. If the fight won't come to me, I'll go to the fight.
That's
Gets
right.
involved towards the center of the map, puts out infinite damage, and Stu just shows up too little too late. Couldn't even peel out for his support there, Aror. It was a death of 1,000 cuts, and the Highland Ravens were given time to apply all 1,000 of them. And a tower to boot as well. A phenomenal swing for the Highland Ravens.
That's what we've wanted to see.
That's exactly what we needed to see. I think maybe it's twofold. You've got VaporishCoast rotating, phenomenal. You're not worried about SOT doing the same because he's dead as well.
Oh, they're
But
doing
the
it.
Fire Giant, they've got burn.
Yeah, they've got burn. They've got Ikveil for Kana. They've got VaporishCoast, who's in a very strong spot.
That's reset time.
But Paul steps forward, and the Ravens do drop the FG. I'll admit, Miff, I liked the call. I liked it from the Highland Ravens, which is probably a bad thing.
No, it
if
was
I'm,
a good
If I'm
call.
liking your choice, it's potentially bad, but it's more the proactivity, right? It's rather than sitting still with this nice gold lead we've built up, checking to see how the Titans reply.
And if it's only one member of the Titans, you kill them, and all of a sudden you're keeping them off balance, and it'd be the exact same situation that the Titans had inflicted upon the Ravens in Game 1. I love that call. I love that idea. Hate this for Cxnnah, though.
He's got Eagles rally away. Cyno will have the damage. Sot might finish off the kill. Sure does. And Defender of Olympus needed. But adapting again rotates over. Mystic Rush not in time, but the autos. Again, go 1 for 1. But this time it's Cyno who dies instead of SOT. So it's a run back of what happened just a few moments ago. Though VaporishCoast not rotating over to mid, so nobody will be caught out here after the fact. But Titans really bought their time, really waited. And now suddenly over the last couple of minutes have made their emphasis killing off this Bellona.
I mean, the Bellona is just so squishy. I wouldn't be surprised if SOT said, hey, Cyno, by the way, this guy has built like an assassin, just rotate over. And Cyno's like, oh, word? And it's been as simple as that. We're finally starting to see some defense stacked up, though, for Cxnnah, which will go a pretty significant ways. But when I look at the state of the game and how long into it we already are, 18 minutes now, this Ravana adapting, he's not going to be getting much stronger than he is currently. Maybe a Heartseeker helps out with the burst a bit going further in the build, but Cyno's a late-game menace on this Nemesis. So we'll just have a phenomenal time not only applying damage for himself with this build, but also anti-heal, and the Executioner should synergize well with the rest of the physicals on his in his team. Paul really benefiting from some of that defense shred. So, very similarly, I think the Tartarus Titans have got some very significant power spikes coming that they can rely on. Whereas the Highland Ravens, it really comes down to their backliners. Angry and VaporishCoast have to make use of the time bought by the rest of the team.
Wow, my goodness. As SOT and Cyno will step forward towards Cxnnah again. Cxnnah might take the ult trade. It's just the Eagles rally in exchange for Defender of Olympus and the Nemesis ult. This time able to live, though. Thank goodness for Cxnnah. The Titans, really for the first time now, more proactive around the Pyromancer instead of immediately over to the Gold Fury. The Highland Ravens won't get to choose between the two, now may have to step up around the Fury. Cozyx with a miss. But Mystic Rush in from adapting, drops Paul, and it's the Highland Ravens with wind in their sails, stepping forward. Angry will chunk out a bit more. The numbers there for the Highland Ravens, and it's a great fight for the SEC squad. A bit more CC needed to grab a kill onto Aror, but the damage hasn't found its way in. And adapting won't get it. And all of that for just a 1-kill swing. Feels bad for the Ravens, but you have pushed back the Titans.
You've pushed back all of them. You've sent them to base, and you've got the 5-stack on this side of the map.
Oh, God.
Fire Giant pulled, SOT and Cyno on the seed.
Oh, and it's Eagles rally used around the FG instead of stunning
Point
out.
toss.
Fire Giant to the Ravens, and the SEC team picks up a kill on the fadeaway as well. As SOT is now dropped, what a turnaround in this game. Finally, the gold means something to the Highland Ravens.
Woo.
Fire Giant on 5 and a kill to go.
Cyno's not out of the lion's den just yet. VaporishCoast, no access to the Bramble Blast. So it's the Highland Ravens who TKO 4, KO 1, back up to the Fire Giant and take it in a true coin toss. Weighted in their favor, thanks to having a standard mage on their side, but certainly not guaranteed. The Tartarus Titans just could not get them off the objective. And finally, the SEC team gets to, I suppose, start moving in towards these towers. Should likely start the siege on the left-hand side of the map, grab the last remaining tier 1, work your way through the structures, and then fall back to neutral objectives. Siege potential, pretty decent for the Highland Ravens. You've got great ways to create space. You've got threat of ranged initiation. Cozyx with landfall could just make anybody who steps forward on the Tartarus Titans a susceptible target. Even Aror at this point, very, very squishy. SOT is not itemized towards standard defense. It is instead essentially just gone for his Hades build on Athena. So very squishy there as well. The Ravens, a phenomenal opportunity won't be on the left side. Instead, through mid. Grab a tier 2. Approach the Phoenix potentially.
Paul is still shoving this tier 2 tower over on right, so a numbers advantage plus a gold advantage for the Highland Ravens, though they haven't gone back and spent up all of it. Oh no, oh, Khan has been pulled back in, has the ultimate to get away. That was a nice defense there from Aror, and now Paul will continue his pressure. Can the Titans stop the backs though? They're not in range, and Paul likely not going for the Phoenix here. And a great split push for the Tartarus Titans mid laner. Opens up a right side bird while the Highland Ravens have done the same over in mid. It's a real awkward spot here, Miff. Now the Highland Ravens are going to be able to go back and actually fully realize this big gold lead that they've built up. But big is only about 4,000 or 5,000 gold. You know, that it's still within swinging range for the Tartarus Titans before these last couple of towers drop.
Yeah, I'm keeping my eyes on the damage charts as well for the Tartarus Titans. Some of your key components of this composition haven't exactly gotten involved just yet.
Who are you talking about, man?
I'm talking about the 4K Paul in mid, you know, that's not great.
No.
Stu's only 1,000 over him at 5K. Has got a little bit more AoE damage now thanks to that Odysseus bow, so should be a bit of a menace in some of these team fights if it's actually stacked up. The Tartarus Titans haven't been truly 5-stacked just yet. We haven't seen them approach the Highland Ravens in an even number state. It's been the Highland Ravens, for the most part, who've been getting the proactive rotations. Just Stu lagging a bit behind VaporishCoast. Now, as the game starts to close up a bit, experience becomes less and less important as multiple people start to approach level 20. Now's the time to start grouping up. We'll see whether or not the Highland Ravens can keep up this level of aggression in a more even footing. Because even on that mid-Phoenix, it looked like the Highland Ravens had an opportunity to push in, even dropping SOT down to about 60% before the fight starts proper. But the squishier initiators of the Highland Ravens start to be a bit of a problem here, especially Cxnnahh.
Whoa.
Just a taunt can really threaten them.
Man, Aror has just been great on these defenses. That's an orb that pulls in a few, whereas around the Phoenix pulled in 2. You can tell the Ravens struggling a bit with the CC that the Titans can just sort of casually throw out. The not full initiation levels of crowd control really made life difficult. Now, Paul has made life difficult just by not being in the fights. Now, he steps over a ward, but prior to that, you're kind of unsure as to exactly where this Pele is, and the Heartseeker can go a long way into finding some damage. This just feels like one root bit of CC away. Blinks exchanged. Man, again, the Highland Ravens not fully convinced they want to turn and burn on any of these targets, especially about a minute away now. The FG buff has fallen off. It's about to get real tense. The Highland Ravens might force the hand of the Tartarus Titans around this next Fire Giant. It's about 6,000, 7,000 gold in the lead. It's bad, but it's far from the worst that we've seen for the second Fire Giant of the game. Very unique decision-making perspective for the Titans.
It is. I think the Titans have to step up and defend here. Now with
They're
only
not that
one
far
tower
behind, right?
still available, yeah, I think this is the best decision that they could make. And if they play it quickly here, it's been a slow regroup from the Highland Ravens. Could even potentially threaten the objective or threaten an ambush before the Highland Ravens are able to regroup properly. Fire Giant still not barreling back down. Tartarus Titans defensive positioning established. Have got ward control of the Fire Giant pit as well. I'm looking at the pockets of the Ravens, only 2 sentries available, so vision won't get too much better for the Highland Ravens. And if the Tartarus Titans so choose, can just hold that defensive positioning and make sure they can't work their way forward. It's actually the Titans who have really gotten aggressive here.
Agreed.
Highland Ravens trying to figure out how they want to move in.
Now over in mid is Cyno. The Highland Ravens with a great opportunity here to send us to a game 3. Remember, no eliminations here, but if you win this set, you're in such a strong spot. Cyno has found a flank behind the Highland Ravens. Stun connects onto Cxnnahh. Cozyx pulled back. Athena, though not level 20 yet, just one taunt away from making a big difference. Staff of Mirrodin as well, so you're hoping to use that Defender of Olympus aggressively, but might be hard-pressed to find a perfect time to use it when the teams are showing all their hand around this fire. Cozyx will walk forward as well. Now the Maui Island, one big pick. That makes the difference for the Highland Ravens, but instead it's back to the FG. A reset from Sot, who will teleport back to the right side of the map. Now you're just looking for the response from the Titans.
Paul's got the flank. Could keep it interesting. Fire Giant reset. The Highland Ravens playing it slow. Aggro had called for this. Group up on fire.
Make him
stare
question it.
down the Tartarus Titans, let that pressure start to mount. The Highland Ravens, they haven't got to do too much here. Just keep the Tartarus Titans around, keep them guessing. Fire Giant pulled once more. Tartarus Titans showing a bit of face.
Cozyx taunted in by SOT. Kana follows up. Cyno's found the back line. VaporishCoast, he's boxing, but he'll get deleted by SOT.
What?
Oh no, it's disastrous.
What?
For the Highland Ravens, the Titans down 6. 7,000 gold have stepped forward. They've picked off the duo lane and now the solo laner. And out of nowhere, the Tartarus Titans slam the door on the SEC team. And they show why they're up in the SPL, and Myth, they've got a real good look at closing out the game and the set.
Right side, Phoenix will fall, but there's so many towers still standing. I'm not certain they could walk into the Titan room. The
They're
Tartarus
doing it.
Titans, they're going for it anyway.
The Tartarus Titans now on the verge of winning game 2. Angry's got to go big, but he doesn't have ult. Adapting doesn't either. Finds
That's one.
Paul on a kill. Angry with another. Oh no! Maybe the Titans are the ones crumbling. Aror backpedaling away from Adapting, who's got a double, and the siege won't happen. 3 kills on the defense for the Highland Ravens.
Angry just goes unspotted. Dash back in from SOT.
Oh!
He's got the 1v1. Adapting gets the triple in response. But it's the Tartarus Titans who lose out on so much momentum. Sure, you take the bird. It's the least valuable one on the map. It could have been a Fire Giant for the Tartarus Titans where they stripped the entirety of the map of structures. Instead,
Should be for the Ravens now.
that's a tried and true panic end. The Titans are panicking.
My God, the Highland Ravens Adapting the captain and Angry on one of his pocket picks. Not pocket, it's one of his best picks. Step up and go big against the Titans underneath their own Titan. And now suddenly it's a tier 2 tower under threat. Highland Ravens with Fire Giant on 4. We'll get the tier 2 on right. Tartarus Titans will respawn. Now, it does make you question where you start to siege here if you're the Highland Ravens. You might feel forced to grab your own right side Phoenix to counter out the fire wave. But my goodness, this is tense here, Myth. I was thinking the Titans surefire to win there, but you got enough damage between Angry and Adapting to extend the game.
I don't think the Highland Ravens are going to give the Titans another opportunity like that. That was maybe a 1 in 20 team fight for the Tartarus Titans where they just color explosion on VaporishCoast and he vanishes at the beginning of it. I don't think he's going to position that aggressively again. The Highland Ravens now with Fire Giant on 4 can start up their siege slowly. I think you might be right to say that just going ahead and grouping up on right could be one of the better answers here. Would be a more valuable Phoenix on left, but so much easier to contend with some of these fire minion waves on the right-hand side and not have to worry about a unfavorable map state if it does go to another Fire Giant dance. Instead, grouped in mid, this is what the Highland Ravens had done previously. They had made an attempt at the mid Phoenix's life, first and foremost with the previous Fire Giant. Seems to me they could do so again because minion waves aren't pushed up for them on the left or the right side lanes, favoring the Tartarus Titans. Highland Ravens just hovering the jungle and hoping that someone from the Titans steps up and gets picked. I'm not certain that that's going to be the case either. You're going to have to generate threat, and to do so, you need to collect these minion waves. Adapting has righted the ship.
Oh no. Oh no, is Angry going to get caught? Is that
Whoa,
going to
Cena.
end the siege? It just might again. The Titans have found a pick. And the Eagles rally, massive, the wild hunt on the follow-up, but the Ravens have to get it done shorthanded. Adapting now with 4 in a row, has tilted things right back, but Aror has done the same to Adapting, and again, the Highland Ravens, oh no, they've lost their roster. Everyone but Coast is gone, and it's gotta be magic once again from the Highland Ravens. In Myth, the Titans already have a Phoenix down, and VaporishCoast with no ult has it all to do.
Man, the Ravens just lose the plot with this Fire Giant siege. I have not once seen a team in a situation like that grab fire and then just meander through the jungle for as long as they did. 15 seconds left on Angry's respawn. Less towers standing this time. The Tartarus Titans, maybe not a perfect situation, but certainly much better here.
No, much, much better. And the Tartarus Titans, they'll have a lot to talk about after this game too. should close things out here, but maybe this is a magic moment for Angry.
Paul, where are you?
God.
Hit it!
The game goes on. The respawn's through from the Ravens. Oh, the Phoenix respawns at the last moment. This is unbelievable. Another triple in the Highland Ravens. They'll go on once again as one lonely fire minion wanders its way into the Titan room. And we will not end the game yet. There is still more to be written here in Game 2.
My man's playing for KD with Worlds on the line. It doesn't make any sense. If you don't agree with the call, it doesn't matter. If your team is going for the end, you have to be there. Paul is holding S while looking out from a distance. Hey, good luck. Good luck backdooring. I mean, it can't work. Kana will stop him. He's got disarm.
Now it's just SOT, and there's 15 seconds on the respawn from Stuart. Aurora will be up in 10.
Spotted.
Maybe just in the bait Phoenix. As Sod, instead of defending the base, is going to go with Cyno to the Titan room.
What?
It's going to work out. It's going to work out, and the Titans, by the skin of their teeth, win the base race and win the set over the Highland Ravens.
The conversation we had earlier was not whether or not the Tartarus Titans are going to make it to Worlds, it's how good are they going to look doing it. They don't look so good right now. That is a bleeding Tartarus Titans that limps their way over the finish line. The Highland Ravens certainly came to play, and they nearly closed it out there. If you even survive, 10 more seconds on that Titan?
Yep.
I mean, that's going to Game 3.
I've never been so unsure of which team is going to win, then so certain that the Titans are going to win, then so certain that the Ravens are going to win, then so certain the Titans are going to win. And it ultimately took a dive in from Cyno and an ult in from SOT to close things out. The Titans, they get it done, not without a little bit of drama. 2-0 to the Tartarus Titans over the EU #2 seed. And we'll see what the desk has to say in the post-game breakdown.
It was a really good start to the game for the Highland Ravens at the very least here in game number 2, getting up 5,000-6,000 plus gold, a couple of fire giants to this team. But then we saw multiple times, Trelly, where this Ravens team just started walking in one by one and dying one by one, team fight after team fight, to where it didn't matter that there was a fire giant. If you're not grouped up as 5, the fire giant buff doesn't feel like it goes super well for him there. And then we got to keep things interesting, at least at the very end. A couple of back and forth Titan dances by the Tartarus Titans, but it does end up in game number 2.
Yeah, to be clear, you don't end up in that position without fumbling a couple fire giant sieges, right? The Ravens certainly did have that game in a position where they could have sieged, but then, as you said, the jungle fights were a bit questionable. It seemed like the Titans were still extremely confident despite being down that far. And then opening up that right side Phoenix was all they really needed to do. It was clear. They got that Titan just low enough. It looked like a fumble, and it would have been, but they had that global presence. Sot was able to join Cyno for the end, and the Ravens knew it was happening, and they just went for the base race that they lost.
Not sure who made the final call there to go for the end, but it was a good call nonetheless. And we've got the man who did join in that final little push through, Cyno, standing by for the post-game interview.
Yeah, Cyno, jungler for the Tartarus Titans, standing by with me here. Cyno, give me snap reactions. Game 2, a bit chaotic. Ravens get a fire giant. You guys defend pretty well. You guys go for the end after they fumble a fire giant siege. It's really back and forth there. So snap reactions after a game like that. Are you feeling like it was pure chaos as a player, or you feel like you guys had it under control?
Yeah, no, we definitely were not under control for sure. There was a couple calls as soon as we made them. We knew they were bad, but we just stayed focused and we were able to win in the end. So all's well that ends well, you know.
Right. Look, I mean, it's a lot of fun as a spectator to watch, and the desk was asking about it. So really, you're playing on very thin margins there on the defense, where the Ravens have an advantage. They're going to siege your Titan. You loop all the way around. Is that a quick mathematical conversion in your own brain? Are you the one making the call? Just ult on me and we can end this? Because they got your Titan down to like half. So in a moment like that, who's speaking up and making those calls?
I mean, we all, as soon as everyone died, we're like, oh, they're going to end. And we talked about it. We said we couldn't defend probably. So that was pretty much our only option there. So luckily it worked out. So.
It did work out. And look, now you can, it was a lot. It was back and forth, but you won the set. You're moving on. You don't have to play tomorrow. You'll play a bit later on here in this weekend. Ultimately, I suppose confidence has got to start building up now. You feel like the last month or so with this team has given you a good opportunity to build up some synergy with the team?
Definitely. I think we're, as a team, I think we're better than when I first joined, and I think just myself as a player, I kind of did not scrim there for a little bit. So scrimming there for like a month, I feel like I'm personally a lot better than I was. So we're feeling pretty good. We feel confident. We think we're going to qualify.
That's right, and you should now after a set like that. You get the job done on the first day, and we'll see what you guys get done later on here in the weekend. Thanks for your time. Best of luck in your future matchups. We'll go back to the desk to close it out.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dave and Cyno, for the post-game interview there. And you kind of hear it. Team wasn't fully confident going into the end there. And amongst the storm was a ton of chaos for that end call there. And even in a moment where we're staring down, we see Cyno walking through, and we see just Kana standing there saying, okay, well, Kana's there. This is defense, no problem. And then the teleport goes through it. I think for a split moment that we see that Kana does see Cyno, and he just goes, oh, it's actually a race. This might be bad, guys. And, well, then we do see the Titans end up being able to walk through there. But I think maybe taking something that Myth said kind of at the very end is this is not a fully put together Tartarus Titans team yet, at least not all, based off of this set so far.
Yeah, it's not exactly clean, but they got the job done. I think that's what's important. You got to remember, Worlds is on the line. This is a lot of money these teams are playing for. Getting the dub is all that matters. The fact that they got through a little sketchy, they can clean that up throughout the tournament, but making sure they win, I assume the Tartarus Titans are going to take that back, maybe rewatch it and figure out what they did wrong and continue to try and improve throughout the rest of this tournament. But I was impressed with the Ravens bouncing back after game number 1. I think they had a very solid composition that they were able to execute on pretty well. It was just the late game decision making with the Fire Giant that was a bit shaky there for the Ravens. And they have, they've got time to bounce back as well, but you got to work on that late game 5v5. What do you do when you're in the lead with Fire Giant? You're not taking jungle fights too often. Maybe they just thought because they were so far ahead they were able to win that, but pressuring those objectives has to be the real call there.
Yeah, I mean, a gold lead only takes you so far when you actually get down to the actual team fighting stage. And that's where in game number 1 we saw the success of the Tartarus Titans. That's where we see it in game number 2. Titans take 2-0 to start out our weekend, and we've got a long weekend of SMITE action ahead of you guys. We have 2 different groups playing throughout. We'll qualify 2 teams from each of those, and with the win by the Tartarus Titans today, that puts them 1 step closer to qualifying to the SMITE World Championship. We will see them later on this weekend in their next matchup, which will be a best of 5 now for that squad. Unfortunate now for the Highland Ravens, though, they are on the loser side of the bracket. 1 more best of 3 for them to see if they continue on into that match 9 best of 5 for a second chance to qualifying, or would be the end of the road. They'll await the loser of the matchup between the Valhalla Valkyries and the Eldritch Hounds. That'll be our last matchup of today. Winner of that will face the Tartarus Titans. That's Group A. Group B is where we'll be taking our second set up. That will be the Oni Warriors and the Shibalba Storm, the number 2 NA team. That wasn't the number 2 team going into their qualifier. Remember, this is a Shibalba Storm team that was sitting right at that 4th seed coming into their event. It was kind of this whole little cluster in the middle between 2nd to 5th seed for the NASCC. The Storm are able to come out on top and qualify in with here, and then Solar Scarabs and Hexmob will be the first matchup of tomorrow at the very least to see how Group B goes through. So Oni Warriors and Shibalba Storm I think could be an interesting match, especially kind of going off a little bit of what Myth was saying on the waiting room, where if this Oni Warriors team is playing at at least that 70% or so threshold, should be a nice win for them. But we've been seeing a lot of back and forth with this team as well.
Yeah, I would think that the Oni Warriors have been able to really tighten down, bolster up ready for Worlds. So if we do get that 70% or higher Oni Warriors squad, it should be an easy match. But you got to imagine the Shibalba Storm, they're the underdogs. They've been the underdogs throughout the entirety of this event and the one previous, right? So they might have some confidence as well, trying to give some shaky strategies and maybe knock the Oni Warriors off their game right off the beginning. If you come out swinging, that could be just enough to get an early game lead, and then anything can happen from there.
Yeah, maybe even kind of tilt the scales in their favor. We'll see if the SEC can make an upset in our second set of the day. That's going to be coming up right next after this. Oni Warriors, Shibalba Storm, right after this break.